Chapter 1076 System, Where are my shark's fins and shark's lips? The broth isn't thick enough. Fail. Fail. After facing numerous failures, Mag was no longer bothered emotionally. He gathered the experiences and dived back in again. Learning to cook was, without a doubt, a boring matter. It could even make a person have a mental breakdown very easily, especially if he had to practice the same step repeatedly for the slightest variation of taste. However, Mag's will had been fortified to the strongest it had ever been in the past few months. This small little blow would not set him back, but became his motivation and prompted him to use the experience in his head to perfect every single step. The pages of the calendar on the wall were flipping over day by day. All the soup pots were handling different ingredients. Lastly, they were layered into the old Shaoxing wine urn which had strong wine aroma in it. Whoa-ho-ho, Colby shivered and woke up. He opened his eyes and took a moment before he leaped up from the ground. He grabbed his long sword subconsciously and sized up his surroundings with fear. He failed to grab the long sword, but the surrounding scenery gave him a shock. The endless sea had disappeared, as did the endless water ghosts. Houses, trees, the square, all the familiar scenes and that restaurant not far away. What is this? Was all that a dream earlier? Colby stunned. His body shook and icicles fell to the ground. The bone-chilling coldness made him shiver and also woke him up totally. No. That wasn't a dream. We were thrown out. Fatty, Skinny. Colby looked around, and then dragged out Fatty and Skinny, who were almost frozen, from the bushes. He slapped the two of them awake. Ah! Don't eat me! I am fat and taste bad. Fatty was awake, but he dared not even open his eyes. He waved his hands around and screamed. Skinny wasn't any better as he cried and said, "Go and eat Fatty. Fatty is fleshy. I don't have much flesh on my body. Wow, don't eat me." He obviously had a mental breakdown. Colby gave them a slap each, and shouted, "Stop it, we are already out. There aren't any ghosts and monsters anymore." The two of them stopped howling immediately. They hesitated for a moment before opening their eyes. They looked at Colby in front of them before looking around them. After ascertaining that they were in Aiden Square, they burst into tears together. "Mommy! I am finally out of there. I will never be a thief again. It's too horrifying, thanks to my ancestors for the protection. I will be a good man from now on. I will never do any bad deeds again. Thank you for getting us out." Fatty and Skinny cried, full of relief after their ordeal. "Seems like the amazing machine in that restaurant is indeed very valuable," Colby said thoughtfully as he stared at Mamie Restaurant. "You cannot be thinking about going back there again, boss?" Fatty said fearfully. "The situation is against us. Let's run." Colby waved his hand and left without a backward glance. Fatty and Skinny scrambled to follow up. They didn't even dare to go search for their weapons. Bastard! Who was that person? How dare she knock me out and steal my prey? She interrupted me. It's outrageous. In a black old castle, the Countess was sitting on a high chair. She smashed the wine goblet she was holding into the ground. Fresh red blood splashed across the floor. "Madam, no exact information has been found so far." Caesar snuck a cautious look at the Countess before saying in a hushed tone, "However, deducing from the information we had gathered so far, Princess Irina had been to Chaos City that day." "Do you think, Irina?" Camilla's voice rose up a few notches, and a tinge of fear flashed through her eyes. Some memories which were unbearable to recall flooded her mind, and caused a blush to creep up her beautiful cold face. "No. It couldn't be her, right? Isn't she busy with some war of freedom? How would she appear in Chaos City?" Camilla said with uncertainty, shaking her head. She remembered that woman who appeared at the doorway suddenly that day. Although she was against the light and was wearing a gauze hat, she did resemble Irina at the instant when the chair struck her. Furthermore, even if it was her, why did she appear there? For that man, or for me? Camilla frowned. You were stuck to the wall. It took your servant quite some time to peel you off, Caesar whispered. Shut up. Camilla glared at it. Frowning, she then said, what's so good about that man? Apart from being a good cook, having a handsome face, being good at bondage, looking good when he's holding a whip. Pooey. These are all nothing. Why would Irina come and look for him deliberately? Maybe she came to eat something. Caesar speculated. No. It definitely wasn't that simple. My instinct is telling me the two of them have a humongous secret. Camilla shook her head with a smile on her lips. As long as I can find the secret between them, and then hand the evidence to Miss Gloria, his true nature will be revealed. Miss Gloria will be devastated, and will seek comfort in my arms. I am indeed a genius. Madam is indeed smart. The boundless sea realm. Lantist at the bottom of the sea. Countless merfolk gathered in front of the altar. High Priest, Princess Gina has left for a long time. A new nether vortex is forming right now. According to the monitoring, it is bigger than any previous ones, and it will sweep across Lantist in a month's time. If we cannot find a way to leave the seal, the children and elderly might not survive this nether vortex, an old merfolk said. All the merfolk had a look of fear when they heard that. There's no need to panic, everyone. Although the number is bigger than any of the past nether vortex, and the scale is bigger, it has not reached the extent sufficient to destroy Lantist yet. The High Priest raised his hand. After the crowd's voices were lowered, he continued, Gina has already set off to search for the Chosen One. Since she is alive, that means she has already found him. Our Lantist will be saved very soon. God will protect us. Phew. Mag opened his eyes and looked at the alarm clock at the side of his bed subconsciously. It was just 6 o'clock. He heaved a sigh of relief that he finally reached the system standards for the final trial. He sat up on his bed. Even though he had been making Buddha jumps over the wall for tens of days in the test field for the god of cookery, his mind was still very alert after he woke up. He wasn't tired at all. He walked over to the beds and covered the two little ones with their blankets. They had to be exhausted after pranking the three thieves last night. Mag went downstairs excitedly after washing up. He opened the fridge and then blinked. He couldn't help but ask, System, where are my shark's fins and shark's lips? But when he opened the fridge happily, he found there weren't any shark's fins and shark's lips. All the other ingredients were prepared except for these two items. Are you out of stock, System? Mag asked, frowning. Important notice, as the shark's fins are obtained from the nether sharks that lived 15,000 meters deep in the boundless sea realm, and due to limited funds, a demersal fishery isn't established. Hence, there isn't a direct supply of shark's fins and shark's lips, the system replied. This is a very unprofessional behavior for an ingredient supplier. Mag raised his eyebrows as he had an ominous premonition. The Buddha jumps over the wall would be lacking two very important ingredients without the shark's fins and shark's lips. Then, did it mean that he had learnt the high-end dish in vain? Due to the problem with the supply, a new mission is triggered. The host has to search for the nether shark's fins and lips supplier by himself, assemble all necessary ingredients that Buddha jumps over the wall needs, and establish a secure supply chain. Your reward for mission completion, 0.5 strength point, your punishment for mission failure, a 3-tier demotion as a knight. Clue fragments of the mission provided, nether shark's coordinates +1, nether shark's picture +1. The system's voice sounded again. A world's map appeared in Mag's mind. A red dot appeared on the boundless sea realm, and there was a picture of a giant shark with huge teeth and vortex-shaped markings on its body. Damn! System, can you be any more irresponsible? Obviously, you are incompetent and yet you want me to go catch a shark. Moreover, it is 15,000 meters deep in the sea. Are you fooling around? Mag scolded as he looked at the map and picture in his mind. The time frame for the current mission is 3 days. Please complete the mission as soon as possible, host. All the best to you. F*CKU. I drowned in the sea in my previous life. This is a malicious revenge. I object. I cannot accept this. Mag couldn't help but yell in his heart. He had something against the sea after he was drowned in his previous life. Wasn't this mission out to get him? Objection overruled. The 3 days countdown starts now, the system replied calmly as a 72 hours countdown began in his mind at the same time. This really is, Mag rubbed the center of his brows, and his mood soured. He had the map and coordinates, but the problem was, how to catch a ferocious shark 15,000 meters deep in the sea. Even someone as strong as Alex wouldn't be able to withstand the water pressure at the depth of 15,000 meters. Mr. Mag, good morning, a sweet voice said right at this moment. Gina. Mag's eyes lit up. He almost forgot that he had a mermaid who came from the bottom of the sea living with him. Gina. I need your help. Mag walked out of the kitchen, and took a pen and paper from the counter. He gestured to Gina to sit down, and he took a seat next to her. He began to draw the nether shark according to the image in his head. What does Mr. Mag need my help for? Gina gazed at Mag curiously. Her expression changed immediately when she saw the huge shark with vortex markings that Mag drew. She exclaimed, Nether shark. Gina, do you know what this is? Mag raised his head up in surprise. He just wanted to try his luck, but he didn't expect he would hit the jackpot. How do you know about the nether shark? Did God give you the instructions? Are you trying to save Arlantis? Gina grabbed hold of Mag's arm excitedly. Then, she saw Mag had a perplexed expression, and realized that he couldn't understand her. She didn't know what to do for a moment. Mag didn't expect Gina to get so agitated after seeing the nether shark. She said a lot, but he couldn't understand a single word. He pushed the pen and paper to her, and gently said, Take your time. Draw out whatever you want to say. Gina's eyes lit up. She took the pencil and drew a cross, separating the paper into 4 equal squares. She started to draw in the squares. In the first square, merfolk were living peacefully, and all their children had a smile on their faces. In the second square, a giant black vortex appeared behind the merfolk. In that vortex, a huge shark could be seen vaguely. In the third square, the merfolk were running in a panic. A mermaid pushed the child in her arms away, but she was split in two by the giant shark with a single bite, and that shark had many vortex-shaped markings on its body. In the fourth square, a huge number of merfolk were attacking that giant shark frantically, but the shark could quickly grow out a new tail after it got slashed off, so the merfolk were suffering huge losses instead. So this is a pest. Mag looked at the 4-square comic. It seemed like the merfolk were suffering a great deal because of it. These savage nether sharks should be the merfolk's mortal enemy. However, Mag's eyes lit up again when he looked at the nether shark's regenerated tail. It has the ability to regenerate its body parts. It's a perfect ingredient. It's just like chives which grow again after you cut it off. Gina took another piece of paper and started to draw again. In that drawing, Mag was holding a cleaver, descending upon them like an archangel, and slaughtered that nether shark with one slash. Numerous merfolk were looking up to him reverently. Putting down the pencil, Gina raised her head to look at Mag, full of hope in her eyes. Mag looked at that last drawing. He didn't expect that to be his image in Gina's heart. However, he definitely couldn't go to the bottom of the sea to kill that shark with one slash of his cleaver. If he could do it, he wouldn't have drowned in the first place. But, no matter how vicious it was still a shark. Since it made its way into the Mamie restaurant's ingredients list, he would make sure even the fiercest beast would be eaten until it became an endangered animal. Mag took the map down from upstairs, and marked the location on it according to the coordinates. The system had marked a center point and gave a big range at the same time, which meant the nether shark could appear anywhere in the range. But now, Mag had a bold idea. Could this region be the location of Lantist? Tomorrow, we will go here, sending you home. Mag pointed at the dot on the map and smiled. Home. Gina didn't understand completely. Lantist, your home, Mag said, pointing at the circle. Back to Lantist. Gina's eyes lit up, and tears appeared at the same time. According to Gina, there were a lot of nether sharks at Lantist, but they only appeared once or twice every year. Their respective size was determined by their capabilities, and numbers would fluctuate. The power of a giant nether shark was comparable to a 10th tier merfolk powerhouse. However, there would have at most 3 giant nether sharks every time when a nether shark school appeared. The capability of a small nether shark was close to a 5th tier merfolk, a medium-sized one was close to a 7th tier merfolk, and a big one was close to an 8th tier or 9th tier merfolk. Besides the terrifying recovery power, what gave the merfolk the most trouble was the nether vortex on the nether shark's body. It had an extremely high defensive capability against the merfolk's magic. When a normal merfolk got attracted by the nether vortex, they would lose their ability to control their magic momentarily, and they would be at the mercy of the nether sharks. It is indeed very difficult to handle an opponent in the deep sea, and to the merfolk, it is their mortal enemy, Mag thought. One of the reasons that the merfolk wanted to leave the deep sea was to escape the nether sharks. It would be too cruel to ask them to help to hunt for nether sharks' lips and fins. After all, the main reason they came looking for Mag was to ask him to help them fight against the nether sharks. Gina, let me think about how to handle the nether sharks first. Mag said to Gina. Then, he started to flatter the system, there should be nobody else who is more professional than you at establishing a demersal fishing ground. What do we do to handle such a nasty big shark? You are absolutely right to ask this system about rearing magic beasts. According to this system's rearing experience, whatever isn't obedient, just beat it into submission. If it still isn't obedient, that means you didn't beat it hard enough. There was a smugness in the system's voice. You might as well have said nothing. Mag rolled his eyes. If the nether sharks had been so easy to handle, the merfolk wouldn't have suffered so badly. I need something more practical. If I want them to establish a dependable shark's lips and shark's fins supply line for me, I will have to give them tangible benefits. Otherwise, who would risk their lives for me? This system had once caught 3 nether sharks for research purposes. If the host is willing to give this system some shares in the supply chain, this system is willing to give the host the research materials as the capital for 30% of the total shares. You are indeed a shrewd businessman, Mag pursed his lips. He pondered for a while and nodded. It's fine that you want to be a shareholder, but you cannot participate with actual operations of the supply line. You will only be entitled to the dividends. Deal, the system agreed readily. A set of research materials was swiftly sent to Mag's mind. The study report on the feasibility of rearing nether sharks. Mag looked at the report in his mind and raised his eyebrows. That looked quite professional. Apart from the system, nobody in this world would actually investigate the feasibility of rearing a species that had strength of the 10th tier just for obtaining shark's lips and shark's fins. Mag read through the materials rapidly after clicking open the files. His facial expression soon became a little weird. This wasn't a normal research study. This was a surgical biopsy. Even Mag, who wasn't an animal conservationist, felt spooky after reading the system's experiments and the experimental data. Heat resistance, cold resistance, epidermal resistance, muscle flexibility, speed of regeneration limit, minimum period for reharvesting, decibel tolerance limit. All the results were obtained through actual physical experiments, and every nether shark was subjected to at least 10 experiments for each individual objective to prevent the emergence of accidental data. There was even a 10th tier nether shark involved. Scientists were indeed scary. Mag raised his brows as he had an intense feeling in his heart. The biopsy experience was really nothing. Conclusion: Nether shark is an aquatic product that has an extremely high rearing value. Its shark's lips and shark's fins are the perfect ingredients for Buddha jumps over the wall. It has a very high nutritional value. Building a demersal fishing ground would enable deep-sea rearing. Nether shark's unique gift, the nether vortex, is formed by the magnetic field in its head. It has a high cutting power. At the same time, it produces a strong magnetic interference with the aquatic magic which renders the magic ineffective. This will damage the fishing ground easily. Solution: set up a strong magnetic field around the fishing ground to deactivate the magnetic field of nether shark by adjusting the frequency, hence deactivating the nether vortex. Nether sharks are very aggressive and have a fixed migration route. They will not stay in a specific area in a long period of time. Solution: after attracting the nether sharks into the fishing ground, use ultrasound to control the nether shark within the range of the fishing ground, thus breaking the fixed migration habit, and proceed to domesticate. System: when it comes to farming for vegetables and meat, besides you and Longping, I only respect you. Mag couldn't help but give System a thumbs up after reading the entire thesis. He was utterly convinced. Since you already have the solutions, you should have already prepared the materials needed to build the magnetic field, blueprints, and the ultrasound machines. Now, it's time for you to display your sincerity as a business partner, right? Mag said smilingly. Sorry, insufficient funds. System sent a roll-eyes expression. If this system had the funds, would this good deal land on you? It would only be a matter of a few slides. It's embarrassing that a system is trying to cheat the host out of money every single day. Other systems are always giving money to their hosts, though. Mag sneered sarcastically. Those hosts will have to cut off their D*CKs and do a live stream and drag if they fail their missions. Mag raised his brows. He cleared his throat before saying, Okay, let's discuss the problem of the equipment. Pray tell, how much will the equipment cost according to the number of nether sharks in Lantist? That is the only nether shark population in the entire Norland continent. There are a total 3,500 of them. Among them, 2,000 are small, 1,200 are medium-sized, 280 are large, and 15 are giant-sized. According to historical statistics, the number of nether sharks that passed through Lantist on their migration route was about 1/3 of the total population. And based on the current deep-sea detection situation, that number will increase this year. They will enter the border of Lantist 3 days later, and enter the merfolk's hinterland 1 month later. After feasting on the merfolk, they will start on their migration route officially. If you want to catch all the nether sharks that swim into the area and rear them, you will need 3,000 square kilometers of fishing ground, and you will need to feed them a large number of fishes. All the equipment will cost 120 million copper coins. Feeding will cost 300,000 copper coins per day. System, are you trying to trick me? Mag rolled his eyes. Building a demersal fishing ground with 120 million and burning 300,000 copper coins for daily operations just to make a helping of Buddha jumps over the wall. Was he stupid? Host, being a god of cookery, any sacrifice is worth it in order to make a perfect delicacy. Money is mere worldly possession. We bring nothing with us when we're born, and we take nothing with us when we die. Isn't it more important to bring happiness to your customers? The system said sincerely. No, my happiness is of paramount importance. Mag shook his head decisively. Wool comes from the sheep's back. Why do you have to worry so much? As long as the price is reasonable, the host will not need to fork out a single cent for the operation costs. The system continued to tempt. Ah, do you take that as a miracle drug? A helping of shark's lips and shark's fins can make a helping of Buddha jumps over the wall, which I could serve to about 10 people. Do I have to charge 20,000 copper coins for a person's helping? The host will be incurring a loss if the price is 20,000 copper coins. The other ingredients for a person's helping of Buddha jumps over the wall cost 1,000 copper coins, the system added. Mag rubbed the center of his brow, shaking his head, and said, "This is not feasible." He raised his head and looked at Gina, who was looking at him with her hands propping her head up. Mag's eyes lit up, and he said, "System, you said you have enough machines to release ultrasonic waves to enclose an area as a fishing ground to rear the nether shark. Using the same rationale, I can build a sanctuary with ultrasounds to allow the feeble and weak merfolk to go in and seek refuge too. Will the costs be reduced tremendously? I don't need to catch all the nether sharks, either. I just need to find an enclosed canyon to rear 100 small and 10 medium nether sharks. According to the 10 days minimum period for reharvesting principle, I can harvest 11 sets of nether sharks' lips and fins every day, which are already enough to supply the restaurant's demand. This will minimize the rearing costs. Now, do a calculation according to this plan. How much money is needed? According to the plan provided by the host, after the strict accounting done by this system, the final data obtained is as follows. The required cost to build the sanctuary is 20 million copper coins, and the cost to build a small fishing ground is 15 million copper coins. Total cost is 35 million copper coins, the system finally replied after a period of silence. All right, you can start to prepare all the equipment required. It would be best if everything is fully automated and no actions are required. Mag agreed without further thinking. He had already saved over 80 million, which was a very successful cost-cutting. 35 million copper coins weren't a small sum, but he still had billions of savings he'd obtained from re-educating those 3 red dragons. Of course, what Mag had focused on was the mission reward. 1 strength point. 35 million copper coins for 1 strength point was the ultimate good deal, okay. Currently, the system wouldn't give him the chance to purchase strength points directly anymore. If he didn't grab this chance, nobody knew when he could return to the 8th tier. Mag wasn't eager to share this news with Gina. She was a nice girl, but he was going to negotiate a business deal with the Lantistenes, after all. Not every one of the merfolk was going to be as nice as Gina. He was already prepared to engage in tough negotiations in order to make a species that had 10th tier powerhouses to be the ingredient supplier for the restaurant. Don't worry, Gina. There will be solutions. Mag, who already knew what to do, consoled Gina. Yes. Gina nodded. She felt reassured looking at Mag's smile. Mag made an announcement after everyone arrived at the restaurant. Tomorrow, I am going to send Gina home. If I didn't estimate wrongly, this should be the location of her home. Mag pointed at a circle on the map. Boundless Sea Realm. That is the demon's territory. However, this location is some distance away from the Demon Islands. I have never heard about a place called Lantis there. Elizabeth looked at the location that Mag pointed out, frowning slightly. Mag calmly continued, I think that is the most possible location after researching through many materials. No matter what, let's go and try. All right, I will send you all there tomorrow. Elizabeth nodded. Can I go too? Yabimiya asked softly. Of course. Elizabeth nodded. It's fantastic, sis. Yabimiya hugged Elizabeth and then stopped herself just in time before happily saying, Big sister Elizabeth. If we are going to the sea, don't we need to prepare a boat? Then, we can fish and even barbecue the fish as soon as we get them out. That would be fantastic, Babla said thoughtfully. But, who knows how to build a boat? Amy asked, raising her hand. Everybody looked at one another, and then shook their heads. At this moment, Firis, who was standing in a corner, raised her hand, and said, If there is wood, I can make a simple boat. Everyone instantly turned their head to look at Firis with bright eyes. This is great. Then we can all sit in a boat and eat unlimited grilled fish. Amy said with elation. Everyone's face had a happy smile too. Everyone was smiling, except Mag, who was looking glum. See? Why are you filled with water? As he'd drowned in his previous life, Mag gathered that he should have gotten PTSD from that. He would feel a pressure on his heart whenever the sea was mentioned. I wouldn't have drowned in my previous life if I haven't gone fishing for that damn crab. Mag mumbled in his heart. No. This is simply a misconception of yours, host. You would have still died even if you hadn't gone out to the open sea to fish for the king crabs that day. It's just that the cause of death might have been, the plane you took crashed, you burned to death during tanning, you drowned in the bathtub, you choked on a little bun, you fell into a concrete mixer full of concrete, you were buried alive during a landslide, or you were eaten alive by a lion. Anyway, you were going to die, the system said calmly. If God wants me to die at midnight, I will never survive to see the sun rise, right? Mag cocked his eyebrow. If this was the case, drowning in the sea didn't seem so bad now. Face your fear and overcome it so you can become stronger. Then, you will become the invincible god of cookery, the system encouraged. Piss off. Mag rolled his eyes. That was easier said than done. Mag readjusted his mentality after seeing everyone's enthusiasm. Smiling, he said, "All right, let's agree to set out tomorrow morning. We are going to send Gina home, and this is going to be our restaurant's first team-building activity. We are going to have a winter tour in the boundless sea, and I will grill fish for all of you." Chapter 1080. Are you preparing to bring some local specialty home? Lantis. In a giant hall full of pillars, a merfolk wearing armor respectfully addressed the high priest in black robes standing in front of the crystal ball. High priest, the migration of the people living at the borders has commenced. But the subterranean castle could only accommodate the people living in the capital. The subterranean castles of the normal little cities may not survive the upcoming nether whirlwinds. Should I proceed to report this? Nether whirlwind was the strongest opponent that Lantis had to face after it sank. In the beginning, the merfolk were defenseless against the impenetrable whirlwinds. They became food for the nether sharks. Fortunately, under the leadership of the high priest and the king, Lantis was rebuilt. The merfolk began to deal with the nether whirlwinds with scale and strategy. However, Lantis still had to pay a huge price every year when the nether sharks appeared before they could survive the 1-month-long dark period. The nether sharks would leave 1 month later and disappear in the vast sea before appearing again 1 year later. This cycle has been repeating for the past 1,000 years. There were a few periods in Lantis' history that the number of nether whirlwinds increased significantly. 300 years ago, 3 giant nether sharks led an attack on Lantis with a few hundreds big, medium, and small nether sharks. The Lantistine's subterranean castle was breached, and the high priest and eldest prince died in the battle. The numbers of deaths and injuries among the normal merfolk were more so countless. And this time, the numbers of nether sharks was even more than during that worst attack in history. Even though Lantis had 10-odd 10th tier powerhouses with the high priest in the lead and hundreds of thousands of merfolk warriors, they still only felt despair when they had to face that hurricane that was immune to magic. No. Let them all return to the capital. A faint blue light appeared on the crystal ball in the hand of the high priest. Scenes of dozens of simple and crude underwater towns appeared on the crystal ball's surface. The nether sharks love to clear the small towns out one by one. There are too many nether sharks this time, no town is going to survive for 1 month. But High Priest, the capital city is going to face the nether whirlwind directly if all the merfolk shift into the capital. Given the upcoming nether whirlwind's numbers and power, we are not able to stop them beyond the capital city. Once the capital city is breached, Lantis will perish completely, that merfolk said to the high priest, shaking his head. Even if we let them stay out there, given the intensity of the current nether frenzy, the capital city will still be breached eventually. High priest, pass on the order first tier command. All the merfolk are going to retreat into the capital to prepare for battle. Disperse the information about the nether shark's current status to all as it is. Mobilize all our people. If we want to survive this nether frenzy, every merfolk needs to contribute, the high priest interrupted the other merfolk calmly. That merfolk's expression became solemn as he loudly replied, yes. Then, he turned and strode off. God, you gave us instructions, but you didn't tell us how to survive this. As your loyal follower, I beg you to save Lantist. The high priest's chanting was reverberating throughout the great hall. Veril Town. As a border town was located in the northwest of Lantist, the arc-shaped black barrier could be visibly seen whenever they raised their heads. It was hanging over their heads heavily as if it was going to fall down any moment soon. The town was located 350 kilometers from the barrier boundary, and it was abound with a kind of small fish called crescent fish. This transparent fish was only as big as a thumb. There was a crescent-shaped bright yellow luminous bone on their head, hence the name. This was one of the rich and noble people's favorite foods in Lantist. It wasn't expensive, but at Lantist where resources were scarce, it was already enough to make many merfolk gather here to catch the crescent fish as a living. Duel, quick, pull the net. I've chased many crescent fish over. A frail teenage mermaid chased a school of shiny crescent fish over. A similarly frail teenage merman swam out from a huge boulder. He swung the fishing net in his hands out, and accelerated toward the school of fish. He caught all those little crescent fish which couldn't turn in time with the net. There are so many. It's fantastic, the mermaid exclaimed happily as she came forward and looked at the hundreds of crescent fish in the net with bright eyes. Do you need to be so happy when it's only a small amount? I will bring you out to catch the big ones one day. One of them is equal to 100 of these small ones. The teenager called Duel glanced at the little fishes in the net with disdain. He looked at the black barrier in the sky, and said, I want this sky. The girl snatched the fish net, pursing her lips, and said, this sky not only blocked your eyes, but also blocked the big fishes too. We'd better stay here and catch the crescent fish honestly. As long as we can catch 5,000 of them, Uncle Bolters is going to bring us to the capital, and we won't have to stay here any longer. The maiden's eyes lit up when she mentioned the capital. She heard that it was a big city that was 100 times, 1,000 times more prosperous than Veril. She couldn't imagine what kind of prosperity that involved. The biggest place that she had ever been to was Bullock City, which was about 300 miles away from Veril. The people of Veril would seek refuge in Bullock City when the past year's nether whirlwinds came. The maiden's face paled when she thought of the nether whirlwinds. Their parents died in the giant shark's mouth in the whirlwind 8 years ago. She grabbed the lad's sleeves, and said, Duel, that's what Uncle Butler's promised, right? Yes, that fatty has already promised us. Duel nodded before he pursed his lips with disdain, and said, not much money is needed to travel to the capital, and yet this fatty asked us for 5,000 crescent fish. He is going to earn more than half from us. It doesn't matter. As long as we can get into the capital city, we won't have to fear the nether whirlwind anymore. A smile appeared on the maiden's face. Looking at the maiden's smile, Duel's expression slowly became solemn. He turned and gazed at the black distant expanse as he clenched his fists, and said, I will kill all those bastards sooner or later. I will. All right, the grill, condiments, and ingredients are all prepared. They should be enough to cook seafood. Mag inspected the case of kitchenware and nodded. Then, he saw Gina coming downstairs with a pile of mud casing. Are you preparing to bring some local specialty home? All right. You obtained the ability to breathe in air after eating this mud casing. If they could obtain the ability to breathe in air and leave the seal, it is also a way out for your Lantist. Mag nodded. Although he felt that was a little too much, he could empathize with Gina's feelings. After arranging the rabbit beanie on Amy's head, Mag said, since we are all prepared, let's set off. Wait. Wait a second. Gina raised her hand embarrassingly and pointed upstairs. There's still some more. Go ahead. Mag waved his hand. Then, everyone watched Gina making over 10 trips to carry down all the mud casing. The mud casing and bags of shattered mud were piled into a little mountain. Do we need to bring all these along? Mag stared at the little mountain with a little headache. There were at least 500 kilograms of mud casings there. The crux was they were bulky and not easy to move around. Gina obviously noticed Mag's difficulty. She hesitated for a long time before she clenched her teeth, and picked up a small bag of shattered casing. Is it enough to just bring this? Mag's eyes lit up. If it is still too much, then I won't bring this bag along. Gina gestured. Mag Elizabeth stepped up at this moment. She waved her hand, and all the mud casing disappeared instantly. They're gone. Gina was shocked as she searched anxiously. Elizabeth showed the silver ring on her finger as she calmly said, "This is my space magic ring. I can help you bring all these over." Stunned, everyone stared at Elizabeth's ring. Space magic rings were not a common sight. Actually, I have a space magic bracelet too. Babla showed off the red bracelet she was wearing on her wrist. Then she waved around, and said, "It could hold this whole restaurant in it." With her being a spatial magic caster and the princess of Moon Nation, a space magic bracelet was a common item to her. She wouldn't need to use it normally. This is an amazing tool that is absolutely necessary for traveling. Mag stared at Elizabeth's ring and Babla's bracelet with bright eyes. Then, he pushed his kitchenware over. "Help me keep them too." Everyone was ready. Mag flagged off and they walked out in a line. "Let's set off." A huge frost dragon took off from Chaos City. It spread its wings and flew southwest. "Erg! We are flying!" Meow Yabimia's shrieks coupled with ugly duckling aggrieved cries made everyone laugh. It wasn't just Yabimia. Babla and Gina were also leaving the city for the very first time since they arrived at the restaurant. They were looking down at the continent from the dragon's back with an equally curious look. Mag became their tour guide as he introduced the mountains, rivers, and basins to them. "Big Sister Babla, what does the surface of the moon look like?" Amy asked curiously. Everyone began to look at Babla curiously too. The question of how the moon that they saw every night looked like was very intriguing. "The moon? It's full of pits," Babla said, shrugging her shoulders. "We live inside those giant pits and built our towns and cities there. We usually don't leave the pits, because there are very intense sandstorms out there. Even a 10th tier powerhouse could be easily blown away." The moon is indeed full of pits? The natives actually were hiding in the pits. That is really surprising, Mag thought. Everyone was having fun except for Gina. She stood quietly at the front for the whole time and stared ahead nervously. Yet, her eyes were filled with hope. Even though everything in the restaurant made her want to linger and stay on, as the Princess of Lantist, she had never forgotten her mission. Saving Lantist was her mission and also her destiny from the moment she was born. She had found the chosen one, and Mr. Mag was sending her home now. She was bringing the tinder that could change the fate of Lantist. Hope. It was something Lantist didn't dare to have for years. At this moment, it became attainable. After flying over mountains and rivers, the vast sea appeared within everyone's sight. The sea breeze brought the moist breath of the sea. The ladies who were seeing the sea for the first time in their lives were very agitated. So there really was a sea apart from the numerous pits. Babla stared at the endless blue sea with her mouth agape and a bright expression. "So, this is how the sea that Princess mentioned actually looks like. I didn't expect I would get the chance to see it myself." "But the princess?" Firis had a tinge of worry amidst her excitement. "The sea. What Grandpa said is true. The sea is really at the end of the continent. But the journey is so much further than what Grandpa described. No wonder we couldn't reach it even after walking for so long." Anna blinked her eyes as if she wanted to take in all the beauty of the sea. This is the boundless sea realm. Nobody had been to the end of this sea, and nobody knows what is at the other end of the sea. However, in the deep part of the sea, there is a dividing line. The other side of the dividing line is considered the forbidden place. Nobody who crosses the forbidden line has ever come back, including 10th tier powerhouses. Elizabeth's voice appeared. A forbidden place that even 10th tier powerhouses couldn't enter? Mag was curious. What was behind the dividing line? Elizabeth carried the gang on her back as she flew across the surface of the sea. She would tell them some general information every now and then, letting them gain quite a bit of knowledge. The location on the map should be somewhere around here, Elizabeth said as she looked down on the blue sea surface below while hovering above it. So, this is where Lantist is. Gina became excited. She stared at the blue sea, and had an urge to dive in straight away. At that moment, Ferris said, "The boat is ready." On the left wing of the Frost Dragon, a 20 meters long wooden boat was completed. A wind blade had just finished a perfect cut. There wasn't a single gap when the wooden boat was pieced together. "We're going down." Elizabeth dived downward. She shook her wings gently when they were close to the sea, and the boat landed on the surface of the sea steadily. A silver light engulfed everyone, and they landed on the boat too. Wait, Mag was already standing at the head of the boat before he could utter another word. His body swayed, and he fell headfirst into the sea. Gina tore the sailor dress from her body and dove into the water headfirst. A rainbow-colored fishtail appeared as she changed into a mermaid and swam toward Mag, twisting her tail. Mag thought he heard screaming. He even forgot how to struggle, or rather his body stiffened the moment it entered the water. He could only stare and watch himself sink gradually. The feeling of suffocation washed over him, but he didn't panic this time round. "I wouldn't drown again, right?" Even Mag felt this was ridiculous. However, his vision began to get blurry, and he knew this was the precursor of losing his consciousness totally. In his vision, a giant black shadow was quickly approaching him with gruesome sharp teeth. Obviously, it was a giant shark. "Damn, system! Daddy is going to die again." Mag's eyes widened as he tried to regain control of his body. He could move his fingers, but he still felt weak. Mk-48 mod torpedo is locked on. Prepare to launch. 3, 2, a line of minuscule words flashed across Mag's mind rapidly. A huge shark was already less than 10 meters away from Mag. Its bloody mouth was open, and its eyes were bloodshot too. It seldom saw this kind of food, but it was sure that it was definitely more nutritious than those little fishes. Moreover, it looked stupider. It should be more filling too. "Don't you dare hurt him!" A slightly shrill voice came from the sea. A mermaid descended from above with a trident in her hands. She slammed into that massive shark with all her might. The trident that was giving out a golden red glow pierced the head of that massive shark easily and pushed it downward. Scarlet blood exploded instantly, and dyed the entire area of water red. Mag vaguely saw an aggressively cute mermaid swimming toward him. She grabbed him, and then swam upward toward the surface. I think I've seen this kind of development somewhere." Mag felt dizzy, and he wrapped his legs around her instinctively. Threat against the host was eliminated. "Launch cancelled," another line of minuscule words floated across. Splash! A splash appeared at the surface as Gina leaped out with Mag and landed onto the boat. All of them were looking at Mag, who was hugging Gina like an octopus with a weird expression. Amy rushed forward worriedly to Mag, who shut his eyes tightly, and asked, "Father, are you all right?" "Amy? I am not dead?" Mag regained his wits as he heard Amy's voice. He moved his fingers and felt something soft beneath them. A familiar feeling awakened his spirits. Maybe it was saved, and he had returned to the moment he transmigrated over? Then, he opened his eyes and saw Gina's blushing face. "Hey?" Mag was stunned before he saw what he was grabbing. A supple breast that was covered by the school swimsuit was squeezed into an odd shape by him, and he was even wrapped around her like an octopus. How could this be the scene he was in? His brain stopped working for a few seconds. Then, he turned his head and saw everyone on the boat looking at him with a shocked expression. Moreover, Amy was staring at his hand very seriously with blinking eyes. A weird silence continued for another few seconds before Mag, who felt disgraced and wished to jump back into the sea again, finally regained his wits. He let go of his hands and legs and fell onto the deck with a plop. All the ladies could feel his pain hearing that sound. Mag stood up, rubbing his painful butt, and let out 2 awkward laughs. Then, he honestly said, "I don't know how to swim." It was a simple and straightforward reason. How could that embarrassing situation have happened if he'd known how to swim? If he'd known how to swim, would that shark have had a chance to even open its mouth? Anyway, he just didn't know how to swim, so he had to grab onto his lifesaver in the water. His posture was inconsequential, he simply had to hold on tightly. All of them looked at Mag's pale face, and quickly resigned themselves to the facts. Mag was an ordinary human, so it was normal that he couldn't swim. Because he was always so outstanding and all-rounded, people forgot about that. Even though Gina was still blushing, she didn't think Mag had gone overboard, because she had felt his helplessness and nerves when she had rescued him. He hadn't done it on purpose. That had been a subconscious behavior. Amy stepped forward and hugged Mag as she softly said to his ear, "It's all right, Father. Amy will learn to swim quickly, and will protect you in the future." "Okay." Mag felt a warmth in his heart and hugged Amy tightly. When he turned and looked at the sea again, he felt the panic in his heart dissipate. "I'm sorry. I didn't control my strength properly," Elizabeth said to Mag apologetically. "It's fine. This is not your fault. I am a little seasick." Mag shook his head. Elizabeth's landing was much more accurate than System's, so it really wasn't her fault. The only problem was that he didn't expect his PTSD to be so intense that he couldn't even struggle in the water after such a long time. That was quite a failure. "Gina, can you sense the position of Lantist? Is it right below us?" Mag asked Gina. He had to break up the awkward ambience quickly with something more important. "Yes." Gina nodded vigorously. She pointed downward, and staunchly said, "Lantist." Gina had felt the calling from down under when saving Mag in the water earlier. She was 100% sure that it was Lantist. Her homeland was calling out to her. "Go ahead. Go home, back to Lantist," Mag said to Gina smilingly. "I know how to defeat the nether sharks. If you need help, we will be here waiting for you and your people." He took out a piece of wet paper from his pocket, on which he drew that he was using a mysterious object to chase away the nether sharks and disperse the nether whirlwinds. He gave it to Gina. "Oh! There is hope for Lantist." Gina had an ecstatic expression after she saw the drawing. Mr. Mag really knew how to chase away the nether sharks. She took the paper from Mag and kept it in her school swimsuit carefully. Then, she hugged Mag agitatedly. "Gina, take this space magic ring with you. You can return it to me when we see each other again." Elizabeth gave the space magic ring to Gina, and taught her the method to open the ring at the same time. Gina placed the ring on her finger carefully as she gratefully said to Elizabeth, "Thank you." Although there were many experts who could catch fish with their bare hands on the boat, the most enjoyable part of fishing was its process. He taught the ladies how to attach the hook and cast out the line, and then how to enjoy the process of fishing under the warm winter Sunday. "Anna, your line is entangled with mine. Firas, can you shift your fishing rod to the side? I think our lines are going to get entangled soon." I threw my rod out together with the line. This was their first fishing trip, so they created so many problems that Mag didn't know he should laugh or cry. He could only choose to be their firefighter and set everything up for them. They only had to wait for the fishes to bite the bait. Only after that did Mag went back to his own position to sit down and wait. Amy sat next to Mag with a little purple fishing rod in front of her. Ugly Duckling sat next to her. It snuck a peep at her before it slowly stretched its paw out at the prawns that were used as baits. Its razor-sharp claws were already revealed. Amy lowered her head and seriously said, "Ugly duckling. Don't steal the prawn, or else I will use you as the bait." Meow. Ugly duckling retracted its claws on its outstretched paw, and forced itself to stroke the heads of the prawns before it kept its paw obediently. A smile appeared on Mag's lips. It would be a waste of her talents if she didn't choose to tame wild beasts. Fishing in the open sea was a form of art, but maybe due to the appearance of that big shark earlier, Mag and the ladies didn't catch a single fish even after waiting for an hour. Mag looked around him. Apart from Elizabeth, who was still watching her rod attentively, the others had already fallen asleep on their lounge chairs under the warm sun, including Ugly Duckling, who was holding onto a prawn. "Maybe we should switch to another location." Mag cocked his eyebrows as he pondered about the necessity of changing the fishing location. Right at this moment, his fishing rod suddenly bent downward, and the bells rang violently. "It's hooked." Almost at the same time, everyone on the boat opened their eyes and reached out to grab their fishing rods. "It's mine." Mag grabbed hold of the fishing rod, which was already bent like a longbow. Judging from the strength on the fishing rod, it should be a big guy, and should be much bigger than any fish that he had caught before. The wooden boat began to shake, and that fish started to swim in circles around the boat and messed up the fishing lines. However, none of the ladies were angry about that. Instead, they all gathered at the edge of the boat excitedly, as this was the first fish that took the bait after an hour-long wait. They were all looking down curiously to see what kind of fish Mag caught. This fish was strong, but Mag wasn't in a hurry at all. He had a 7th tier power now, and that wouldn't diminish just because he was standing on a boat. Moreover, the system had promised that the fishing rods, hooks, and lines were all able to withstand a 5-ton load when he bought the equipment. After letting that big guy swim for some time, Mag began to retract the line slowly. After all, he didn't lack the strength, and he didn't need to worry about the line breaking off. "Go, father! Go!" Amy was cheering with tightly clenched fists together with Anna. She had a reverent expression on her face. With the encouragement from the Lolitas, Mag naturally felt very full of energy. When the fishing line was sufficiently retracted, he grabbed hold of the fishing rod with both hands and pulled upward forcefully. A big fish with blue stripes was pulled out of the water, and landed on the boat with a bam. The boat shook upon the impact. This fish was about 2 meters long, and weighed above 100 kilograms. Its blue striped scales were gleaming under the sunlight, and there was even a light golden beam over its body. A mutated grouper species. Mag stared at that fish in a shock. It seemed like it even was a first-tier magic beast. However, after it was pulled aboard, it seemed to have lost its fighting spirit. It simply opened and closed its mouth without putting up a struggle. "Wow! That's a huge fish!" Amy exclaimed in surprise, and went forward straight away. Meow! Ugly Duckling's eyes had already turned green, and it went forward too. It pressed on that big fish tail instantly. Right at this moment, a vicious gleam appeared in the big fish's eyes, and it twisted its body in an attempt to swat Ugly Duckling away. Bam! Before it could act, an oar had already landed on its head, and killed it with just a single strike. Everyone, who was only about to react, looked at Yabimiya, who was holding the oar. "Did I use too much force?" Yabimiya kept the oar in her hands away sheepishly. She stuck out her tongue, and said, "I have never seen such a big fish before, so I was a little nervous." "Well done, Mia. I will handle the rest from here." Mag stepped forward with his cleaver, and began to clean the fish. Although he had no idea what kind of fish this was, judging from its appearance, it should be a type of grouper. Even though he had seen 100 kilograms groupers before, this was the first time that he had caught one himself. Furthermore, it even was a first-tier magic beast, which made it even rarer. This made him very curious about the texture of this big fish's flesh. Grilling it was an obvious choice, but this fish was just too big, so he could only grill a part of it. Besides that, Mag cut out a piece of the fish's flesh, and sliced it into 2 plates of sashimi. The fresh fish's flesh was naturally pink, and beautiful white wavy lines could be seen on it. It was sliced into rectangular pieces and looked very enticing. The grilled fish still had to take some time, so Mag asked the ladies over to try out the sashimi first. Amy looked at that plate of sliced raw fish puzzledly, and asked, "Father, how can we eat a fishy that isn't cooked?" The others were also looking at Mag perplexedly. They had never eaten any raw food in the restaurant before. Mag would always turn the ingredients into delicacies. This is a marine fish, so it rarely has parasites. Hence, it is all right to eat some of it raw. Mag used a pair of chopsticks to pick up a piece of sashimi on a plate. He placed some wasabi on the fish, and folded the fish in half with the wasabi inward. Then, he dipped the fish in some soy sauce before putting it in his mouth. A gentle bite and the fish's freshness, the soy sauce's fragrance, and the wasabi's spiciness all blossomed in his mouth at the same time. The taste buds also seemed to blossom with them as well. Chapter 1084. The outside world had become so terrifying after 1,000 years. Deep in the sea, the light was getting dimmer. A figure was piercing downward like an arrow. That black water barrier had already appeared in Gina's vision. This was her first time seeing the exterior of the water barrier that sealed Lantis in. Gina went through it. She turned and looked at the barrier that was already restored with a surprised expression. "I succeeded." The cursed barrier that the merfolk Atlantis couldn't go through for so many years was easily penetrated by her. As expected, the barrier lost its effect once she gained the ability to breathe on land. The merfolk who were fishing nearby the barrier saw a sudden vibration on the barrier before a figure came through it. Their mouths were agape with astonishment as they rushed to hide. Someone quickly recognized Gina, and exclaimed, "It's Princess Gina. Princess Gina is back. She actually passed through the cursed wall. Did she find the Chosen One?" The news of Gina embarking on her journey to search for the Chosen One had already spread throughout Lantis. Lantis' hopes were all pinned on her. The merfolk quickly connected the dots when they saw Gina came through the wall. Jubilation could be seen on their faces. "Yes! I am back!" Gina kept the trident away before transforming into a beam of light and swam downward to the capital, Ivo City. Gina. In the Great Hall, the High Priest opened his eyes suddenly as an image of Gina appeared on the surface of the crystal ball in front of him. Did she find the way to go through the seal? The High Priest's murky eyes brightened up instantly, and his hands began to shake uncontrollably. "Princess Gina is back!" Cheers soon reverberated throughout the capital. The merfolk looked at the flash of light that was slowly approaching and cheered ecstatically. The news of the Nether Shark's massive invasion had already spread throughout the capital city. Pessimistic and desperate sentiments were spreading. The sudden return of Gina was like a boost to the heart, and Ivo City erupted in cheers. "Gina is back! There is hope for Lantis." In the palace, the king heard the cheers outside. He stood up immediately and swam outward excitedly. "Gina! My child, you are finally back!" Happiness flashed across the queen's face as she followed the king and swam out of the hall. The rainbow flash stopped gradually on the altar. Gina kept her fishtail and stood on the altar with both her legs. She smiled as she looked at her people surrounding the altar. The merfolk looked at Gina with elation, but when their gazes landed on her strange clothes, their expression became those of curiosity. Different from their clothes which were made from seashells and seaweeds, the clothes on the princess looked more sophisticated. They were not things that could be found in Lantis. A dim light flashed and the high priest in black robes appeared on the altar. "High priest!" Gina bowed and greeted him respectfully. The merfolk surrounding the altar also bowed and greeted him respectfully. "Their Majesties, the King and the Queen." Another loud announcement sounded, and everyone immediately parted to create a path. The King and Queen swiftly arrived onto the altar. "My royal father and mother." Gina bowed respectfully again, and the rest of the merfolk followed suit. The high priest stared at Gina for a moment before he asked in his hoarse voice, "Gina, have you met the Chosen One? Have you learned how to breathe on land?" Everyone looked at Gina with intense anticipation. This was of utmost importance to Lantist. The fate of Lantist could change totally because of that. Even the king and queen were filled with anticipation. Gina nodded vigorously. "Yes. I have met the Chosen One, Mr. Mag. He saved me and made the miracle drug that gave me the ability to breathe on land. Also, I could pass the cursed barrier directly without any obstruction." The Chosen One. Miracle drug. Commotion erupted among the merfolk, who were all very agitated. The king stepped forward and agitatedly asked, "Gina, did you bring back the miracle drug? Where is the Chosen One now?" "Yes. Mr. Mag gifted me with a lot of miracle drugs. The beautiful Miss Elizabeth lent me the space magic ring which allowed me to bring all the miracle drug back." Gina nodded and raised the space magic ring on her hand. She pondered for a while before she waved her fingers, and created a space without water by pushing the water away. Then, she activated the space magic ring, and emptied all the mud casing out. The mud casing gleaming with a golden light resembled mysterious eggshells. All the merfolk's eyes lit up. "This is the miracle drug that could lift the curse from our people? Is it the eggshell from a sacred beast?" The high priest stepped forward and stared at the mud casing in the hydrophobic space with a gleam in his eyes as if he was looking at the most precious treasure. Generations of high priests had striven for a millennium to lift the curse from the merfolk, but they had all failed. And now, the antidote was right in front of him, within his reach. The world beyond the barrier was no longer far away. The merfolk's gazes were reverent and desperate. This was the hope for Lantist. "No. They are made by Mr. Mag. Although there indeed is a very delicious chicken underneath the shell, it certainly isn't a sacred beast, because many people were eating one of them every day and discarding the shell straight away." Gina shook her head. "Hiss!" The sound of sharp breaths being drawn immediately rang out as the merfolk stared at Gina in disbelief. Even the high priest's expression was frozen on his face. "The people outside are already so extravagant," the king said with a grim expression. "Are their powers horrifyingly strong now? I've already met 5 10th-tier powerhouses at Mr. Mag's. 2 of them will come to the restaurant for their meals every day. Mr. Mag's restaurant has a server, Miss Elizabeth, who is an 8th-tier frost dragon. There is also a 7th-tier spatial magic caster, Miss Bablat. Mr. Mag's 4-year-old daughter, Amy, is already a 6th-tier magic caster," Gina answered after a moment of thought. This, shock flashed across the high priest's face. The altar's surroundings were in complete silence, and fear could be seen on all the merfolk's faces. A 4-year-old 6th-tier magic caster. The outside world had become so terrifying after 1,000 years, the king said in a trembling voice. Chapter 1085 Father, I want more. A merfolk's lifespan was about 300 years. Gina was already a rare genius among the merfolk, but even she had only just started her training at 4 years old. This disparity gave the king a chill in his heart. Gina already met 5 10th-tier powerhouses when she had only left for a few days. Furthermore, she could see 2 of them every day. Was the outside world already full of 10th-tier powerhouses? The world out there was too scary. Lantist might even have to thank the cursed barrier for enabling them to reign peacefully for 1,000 years over this part of the world. All the merfolk were having the same thoughts. Gina's short explanation had already exposed the great disparity between Lantist and the outside world. If they had to subject themselves to other species' rule after leaving the sea, they might as well remain at the bottom of the sea. After all, it was only a simple death when facing off with the scary nether sharks. Gina didn't know what to do as she faced the crowd's complete silence. The crowd who was so excited initially was now awestruck. She had no idea what she had said wrongly. Mr. Mag and the ladies are all very nice. The people who come to eat at the restaurant are nice too. Everyone is nice, Gina explained. She could sense the crowd's fear, but she didn't know where this fear came from. Gina's consolation calmed the crowd down a little. Gina, how many of our people can attain the ability to breathe on land with these miracle drugs? The high priest asked. No matter how the outside world had evolved, Lantist was facing an imminent attack from the nether sharks. These miracle drugs would at least let some of their people escape the cursed barrier and gain the ability to leave Lantist. If Ivo City really couldn't survive the upcoming nether vortex frenzy, then ensuring the continuity of Lantist would be a very important issue. I attained the ability to breathe in air after eating a complete miracle drug set. There are 321 eggshells here, so at least 321 of our people could attain the ability to breathe in air, Gina said after giving it some thought. Good. The high priest nodded thoughtfully. Gina, did the Chosen One tell us how to handle the nether vortex frenzy? The king asked after composing himself. As a king, since he couldn't lead Lantist back to its golden age, then the most important issue now was to ensure Lantist's survival. All the merfolk looked toward Gina. Survival was everyone's wish. Nether shark. Mr. Mag said he has a solution that can help us chase away the nether sharks. He gave me a drawing to show to the high priest. Gina's eyes lit up and took out the drawing that Mag gave her earlier from her school swimsuit. Hope arose in everyone's eyes. If they could repel the nether sharks, at least they could survive. However, the drawing was disintegrated by the terrible water pressure as soon as Gina took it out. Gina looked at the disintegrated drawing in shock. It's no more. Everyone was shocked as they glared at the slowly sinking powdered paper and blinked. If the solution to save Lantist had disappeared in such an absurd manner, it would be really difficult for them to accept, right? It's okay. I have remembered the drawing, and I can draw it again, Gina quickly said. She waved her hand, a cloud of white sand flew up from beside the altar, and landed flat on the altar under her instruction. Then, she crouched down and used her finger to draw in the sand. 2 drawings were completed very quickly, and they looked exactly the same as the one Mag gave her. One of them was showing an object repelling the nether sharks with something wavy. The other was showing how a person crushed the nether shark's whirlwind, and then subdued the nether shark. Did the Chosen One really give this to you? The high priest couldn't help but exclaim. Lantist had been facing off the nether sharks for over 1,000 years, but they had never found the solution to crush the nether whirlwind. Yet, in these drawings, that person had crushed that vortex so easily. This was simply unbelievable. The king and queen couldn't hide their joy. If all these could come true, Lantist's impending danger could be resolved. Yes. Mr. Mag is up there right now. Father and the high priest can follow me up to meet him. He is a very nice man and will definitely help us. Gina nodded. The high priest clenched his fists, and said in a deep voice, "This is fantastic. God bless Lantist. He sent the Chosen One here to save us. My Lantist will longer be under the threat of the nether sharks. It's a great blessing," the king also said agitatedly. The merfolk also let out cheers of happiness. The huge burden weighing on all of their hearts was finally lifted. The high priest asked, "Gina, how do we take this miracle drug? I want to meet the esteemed Chosen One personally and thank him for bringing hope to Lantist." The scrumptiousness blossomed naturally in the mouth after the sashimi was put in. There wasn't any fishiness, but instead it had a sweet taste. The texture of the fish was tender and pleasantly chewy, and after combining with the tastes of soy sauce and wasabi, it got even tastier as it was chewed. The irresistible beautiful taste filled the entire mouth, and it was almost impossible to stop chewing. The 5 tastes of fragrant, sweet, granulated, savory, and spicy were combined into one. The wonderful feeling made Mag cock his eyebrows. The fresh taste of the sea didn't need to go through any methods of cooking. It was already a beautiful delicacy on its own. Wow! This fish is meant to be made into sashimi. After swallowing it in a gulp, Mag couldn't help but sing its praises. Is it really so nice? I want to try it too. Amy was the first to step up. The others were still observing the situation. Mag rolled up a piece of sashimi for Amy and fed it to her mouth. Amy frowned initially as if she was choked by the taste of the wasabi. However, after chewing another several times, her brows relaxed, and she began to enjoy the chewing. Even her body began to move along gently as she immersed herself into the delicacy. Gulp. Someone just swallowed her saliva secretly. Wow! This sashimi is so delicious. Father, I want more. Amy swallowed the piece in her mouth before asking Mag for another piece immediately. All right, I'll get you another one. Mag obliged. He wrapped another piece of sashimi with wasabi and gave it to Amy with a smile. Seems like it's really delicious. I want to try it too. Yabimiya swiftly joined the food testers camp. She copied the way Mag rolled up the wasabi in the sashimi, and dipped it in soy sauce before putting it into her mouth. Oh my heavens! How could a fish taste like this? It's not fishy at all. Mia was shocked as she felt the beautiful taste going on a rampage in her mouth. After indulging in the taste of the sashimi, they fell into the trap of the grilled fish. A crab that was fished up did not need any additional seasonings. After steaming it in the pot for a while, one would be able to enjoy its deliciousness. Elizabeth looked at Mia, and then at Mag. She frowned a little. She could not deny that Mag was indeed a very outstanding man, whether it was his character or his abilities. Even in the dragon tribe, she did not think she saw anyone that could be his equal. However, the lifespan of dragons and humans varied too much. She did not dare to imagine the loneliness after 100 years. As her sister, she had to remind Mia about that. Even if she really had feelings for Mag, it's great that everyone likes it. Mag smiled. It was a good feeling to have gained a fangirl. But, why isn't big sister Gina back yet? Did she run into some trouble? Amy said worriedly as she leaned over the side of the boat to look into the water. I heard from my grandpa that there are a lot of ferocious monsters in the sea. What happens if big sister runs into danger since she went alone? Anna was also full of worry. The ocean is Gina's home. She's able to unleash her fullest potential in the water, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem, Mag said. However, even he did not seem to be too confident. Gina had already left for 2 to 3 hours. She should already be back judging from her speed. He was confident that the one who held the power among the merfolk would come over quickly to have a talk with him after seeing that drawing. Amy turned her head back to look at Mag, and expectantly said, Father, why don't we go down to have a look? I've never been into the ocean before. It should be super fun down there, right? Mag was put in a difficult position. After just having a narrow escape from death in the water, making him go back into the water now would be impossible. Judging from his current condition, death would be the only outcome for him if he went down. The Jiaolong submarine is the best choice for deep-sea exploration, treasure hunting, and touring. Not for 10 million copper coins, not for 1 million copper coins, but only for 99,999 copper coins, you will be able to rent the Jiaolong submarine. In the comfort of the 8-seater with a full autopilot function, you will be able to travel underwater at the speed of up to 1,000 knots and up to 16,000 meters deep. What are you waiting for? Rent the Jiaolong submarine and bring your family along on an unforgettable deep-sea exploration. Just then, a submarine in a water droplet shape appeared in Mag's mind together with the system's merry voice. Mag system, the way you earn money is really pitiful. Mag could not help but lament. What do you know? The system invested a lot of money to make this submarine back then in order to catch a nether shark for research. Now I'm stuck with it, so I can only try to recoup my losses by renting it out, the system shouted. However, it quickly felt that it had said too much, so it sent a smiling emoji. Of course, it is not impossible if the host wants to own a submarine. With just 25 million copper coins, this all-rounded submarine will be yours. System, you said that you used this back then to catch nether sharks? So you also caught the 10th tier nether shark with this submarine too? Mag asked instead of giving the system a reply. Of course. It's just a larger sized sea creature. What's the difference? The system said, puzzled. There isn't a difference. Mag had a weird expression on his face. He was unable to continue this conversation. Yes, the water looks so clear. It's such a pity I can't swim. Otherwise, it would definitely be very fun to go underwater, Yabimiya said with a little disappointment. Actually, I can swim, but I've only swum in the swimming pool at home. I've never tried swimming in the ocean. Babla glanced at the surface of the water, and inched a little away from the side. There was still some difference between the water here and the water in the palace's pool. Mag saw how everyone seemed pretty interested in the sea. He pondered for a while, and told the system, for a submarine, 99,999 is impossible, 9,999 copper coins and no more. If you're willing, I will rent your submarine again the next time I go out to sea. That way, you would be able to recoup your losses after renting it to me for 2,500 times. Isn't this a great deal? Wrong. Host, you are insulting the system's intelligence. How is that so? I've always been very kind. Mag raised his eyebrows. Has the system become smarter? If I were to recoup my losses by renting it 2,500 times, a single rental fee must be 10,000 copper coins. The host's offer is already lower than the system's lowest limit, the system said seriously. All right, I will raise the offer by 1 copper coin, but you must ensure that the equipment for catching nether sharks is all in working condition. Also, I want a sufficient number of uses. This is to ensure my safety. I suppose that wouldn't be a problem, right? Mag rolled his eyes, behaving as though he was the one at a disadvantage. Deal. The host has the upper limit for the equipment use, and you have also obtained the system's promise for safety protection, the system agreed readily. Mag let out a soft cough to interrupt the women's discussion, and smilingly said, if everyone really wants to go underwater, there is a way. I've been working on a submarine previously, so we can test it now. Submarine? Where is it? Father, did you leave it at home? Amy asked curiously after she circled around Mag and failed to find any submarine. The group of women also looked at Mag in bewilderment. A submarine that could fit everyone would definitely not be small. Could Mag also have a space magic ring with him? No, I brought it along. There it is. Mag reached a finger out and pointed at the water surface. Everyone's gaze followed the direction of his finger, but the empty water surface was still empty. The awkward silence lasted for 2 minutes. Mag smiled awkwardly and retracted his finger. What kind of lousy delivery service was that? The estimated time provided by the system was not accurate at all. *T. I want a refund. Boom. Just as Mag was about to say something to ease the awkwardness, a large water droplet-shaped metallic ball came falling from the sky, landing in the spot Mag had pointed at it, causing a large splash. Its streamlined appearance won all the bulky submersibles of the past hands down. It even felt a little like alien technology. However, this appears a little familiar. Wow! It's huge! Amy exclaimed. Boss, how did you bring it over? Yabimiya exclaimed curiously. I borrowed a space magic ring before we came, Mag replied patronizingly. This wave of showing off was a lack of consideration on his part. He'd better keep a low profile. Luckily, the submarine caught everyone's attention, so no one really took note of what Mag said. Mag felt his pocket become heavy. He reached in and felt a controller the size of a cell phone. The system had sent the operational method into his brain straight away. All right, we can go in now. Mag pressed a button, and a door appeared on the water droplet-shaped submarine. A transparent bridge extended from the door over to the wooden boat. Off I go. Amy was the first to jump on the transparent glass bridge, and she quickly ran towards the submarine. The other women also stepped onto the transparent glass bridge and walked towards the submarine. This metallic ball looked very high class. Even its hanging ladder was made of crystals. Very quickly, only Mag and Ugly Duckling, which was lying on the boat, refusing to move, were left on the wooden boat. Mag glanced at the glass bridge and put on a calm expression, but his legs were already trembling. He was already starting to regret it. Why did he have to agree to such an unreasonable request? Wasn't that akin to pushing himself towards a fire pit? After taking a look at that glass bridge, and then at the crashing waves below the bridge, he felt as though his legs were filled with lead, refusing to listen to his command. Ugly Duckling, you're so timid, come over quickly, don't let father wait for you. Amy said with disdain as she stood at the door of the submarine with her arms akimbo. Meow. Ugly Duckling meowed pitifully. It looked at Mag and still refused to move. Mag blushed when he heard Amy. He looked at Ugly Duckling, and felt as though he could empathize with it. No, I cannot let Amy think that I am very timid. Mag told himself. He took in a deep breath, bent down, and picked Ugly Duckling up. After that, he took a step forward onto the glass bridge. The glass bridge swayed a little, and Mag subconsciously glanced down. Below the glass bridge was the tumultuous waves. He suddenly felt dizzy. Meanwhile, Ugly Duckling, which was in his arms, was already staring blankly into the sky. Oh no! Mag exclaimed inside. He quickly closed his eyes and sprinted towards the submarine with Ugly Duckling in his arms. When it felt about right, Mag opened his eyes again and almost knocked into the women standing at the submarine door. He stopped in time, laughed awkwardly at them, and said, "Let's all go in, the wind is strong outside." After the women turned and walked into the submarine, Mag held the side of the door and panted for a while. Then, he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead without anyone noticing before straightening back up, and walked towards the interior of the submarine. The interior of the submarine was unexpectedly spacious. There were 2 seats in the cockpit, and other than the 6 chairs fixed to the floor, there was still some space for activity. The interior of the submarine was mainly in silver, and the cool lighting gave the entire interior a science fiction feel to it. Mag looked around. This had completely matched his fantasy about alien technology when he was in middle school. He could not help but exclaim inside, "System, not bad. If the host likes it, the system can let you have it with a discount of 1 copper coin, which includes lifetime maintenance," the system replied very quickly. "It's all right, I'm fine with just renting it," Mag said with a chuckle. No matter how good this submarine was, he would barely use it 250 times in his lifetime. Why would he spend 25 million on it? He wasn't a pea-brain. Once the door of the submarine closed, the silver submarine wall gradually became transparent, even the floor. One could see perfectly from all angles in the submarine with a very wide view. "Wow! This is great!" Amy exclaimed softly as she leaned over to look out into the sea. "Impressive! You can actually see everything outside. The view would definitely be better once we go underwater." All the women found this even more magical than magic. Now, they saw Mag in a different light. So other than being good at cooking, Boss is actually so impressive when it comes to tinkering with such things. When the floor suddenly became transparent, Mag's legs went jelly and he almost fell down. Luckily, he held a chair to steady himself, and sat on it. Meow. Ugly Duckling also let out a sharp cry. It jumped into Amy's embrace and hid its head in its paws. "Host, look, this is the system's personalized design. In the submarine, one can look out into the underwater world perfectly from all angles. The light can shine out 1,000 meters into the distance, so it really is the best for underwater exploration and touring. Are you sure you're not going to consider it?" The system continued to boast. "That's such an exaggeration, Mag rolled his eyes. He looked down carefully at the surging waves underneath him, and took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. Since he was already in the submarine, there was no turning back. They had to go underwater now. Besides, Mag was also a little curious about the kind of place the merfolk lived in. Also, what kind of creature was the nether shark? To solve these questions, the simplest way was to go underwater and take a look. System, go to the border of Lantist closest to the nether sharks. I want to take a look and see what exactly nether sharks are, Mag said inwardly. Immediately, a destination appeared on the control panel. Veril. Mag turned around to say, "All right, everyone, return to your seats. We're getting ready to set off." Amy ran over with Ugly Duckling in her arms and sat beside Mag in the co-pilot seat. The safety belt buckled up automatically. After he was sure that everyone was in their seats, Mag pressed the start button in front. The submarine swayed a little, and dove right into the water. Veril Town. Early this morning, the news of the nether sharks' invasion quickly spread to Veril. The people living in the town had received orders to pack their things and wait for the order to retreat to Ivo City. "Duel, this is great, we can finally go to the capital. Besides, we don't have to hand the crescent fish over to Uncle Bolters. We can have it on the way there." In a rundown little house, a young lady, Kelly, grabbed Duel's hand as she smiled excitedly. "In the past, when the nether sharks invaded, we merely went to Bullock City to hide for a while. Why are we retreating to Ivo City this time? It seems a little abnormal." Duel was still puzzled. Just then, a shrill conch sound blasted from outside the town. Chapter 1088 Nether Shark Invasion. "The nether sharks are here to attack." Duel's expression changed. This sea conch's blare was the highest tier warning, signaling that the nether sharks attacking were very powerful. Duel, Kelly grabbed the corner of his shirt. Duel turned back to look at her. "Be careful," Kelly said softly and loosened her grip. "It's no big deal. I'll be back in a jiffy." Duel reached out and stroked Kelly's hair as he smiled relaxedly before he turned to leave. The sound of the conch horn echoed throughout Veril Town. A light blue glow started rising, and slowly enveloped the entire town. Hundreds of merfolk warriors gathered outside the town, looking out at the darkness ahead solemnly. "Mayor, we've received news that a large nether shark and 2 middle-sized nether sharks are swimming towards our town, and they will arrive very soon. What should we do now?" a mareman asked an old mareman, who was standing in the middle, worriedly. The other merfolks were also very worried. Amongst them, the strongest, Catbull, was merely an 8th-tier expert. Other than him, there were only 3 other 6th-tier merfolk, and the rest of them were all below the 6th tier. Although Catbull was as powerful as the large nether shark, the nether shark's nether whirlwind and their ability to recover allowed them to be undefeatable when faced with an opponent of the same tier. With Veril Town's defenses, they would not be able to hold the 3 nether sharks back for long. The moment their defense system collapsed, the entire town would face destruction. Catbull rose slowly and turned to look at the other mere warriors as he loudly said, "I've already sent news back to Bullock City and the capital. I believe that there will be reinforcements coming to help us very quickly. What we need to do right now is to hold those 3 nether sharks back before our reinforcements arrive." "Shake it," the merfolk warriors shouted together, and their morale rose in an instant. Around the altar, the high priest was calling out names to distribute mud casings. Every powerful merfolk that was named was delighted. They held the mud casing carefully with both hands and took a deep breath. After that, they stepped into the space devoid of water, put the mud casing in their mouth, chewed, and swallowed it. Cough, cough, cough. Hack, hack, hack. Various sounds of choking filled the air. The merfolks all gripped their throats, coughing so much they were tearing, yet they did not dare to spit even a little of the mud casing out. This was the miracle drug that the princess went through a lot of difficulties to get from the chosen one. It was also the hope of the merfolk. No matter how difficult it was to swallow it, they'd have to do it, and they'd have to do it willingly. Don't eat it just like that. Actually, it wouldn't be so difficult to swallow it if you had it with some seawater, Gina quickly suggested when she saw all the powerful merfolk with their faces flushed red. When they heard that, they quickly stuck their heads out to take a huge gulp of seawater. Indeed, after soaking in seawater, the mud casing that was as hard as stone became much softer, and was much easier to swallow. What was even more miraculous was that although the mud casing did not really have a taste, after the merfolks swallowed it, they felt a warm sensation flowing through their limbs. A strange feeling slowly surfaced, and their steps felt lighter. Their bodies felt as though they were about to float on their own. The merfolk in the space without water started to feel something strange. The air that was initially unbreathable felt easier to take in, and they could slowly obtain some oxygen through their noses to soothe the suffocating feeling. The change was very slow but very clear. The high priest, king, and queen were the first batch of merfolk to eat the mud casing. Right now, they were already starting to attempt expelling the seawater around them and trying breathing in the air in the space with no water. Although it was more difficult than breathing in water, and they felt that the air that they breathed in was difficult to use, this new experience still made them very surprised. For merfolk to be able to breathe in the air was a dream that their ancestors had been cherishing for centuries. Now, it was easily obtainable by just taking this piece of miracle drug. It felt surreal since it all came so easily. When they could master the breathing technique completely, they should be able to go past that curse, and would no longer be trapped by a small seal. The normal merfolk also started staring fervently at the merfolk who had taken the mud casings. Although most of the merfolk there did not qualify to eat the miracle drug, that did not mean that they'd not qualify in the future. Just then, a merfolk warrior wearing armor came up anxiously to tell the king, "Your Majesty, we've got the news that 3 nethers are invading prematurely, and are already past the borders, heading for Veril." The noisy drug-giving scene suddenly quieted down. The excitement that the miracle drug brought them still could not let the merfolk overlook the threat of nether sharks. How powerful are the nether sharks invading us? The king turned serious. The residents of the border town had yet to retreat. If these 3 nether sharks were very strong, they might be able to attack straight in, bringing inestimable destruction. 1 large nether shark and 2 middle-sized nether sharks. Bullock City has already sent people over as reinforcements after receiving the call for help, the mayorman quickly replied. The king fell silent for a while before saying, "Send orders out to get the army at the borders over to Veril quickly as reinforcements. At the same time, send out orders to get the residents over to Ivo City immediately. The nether sharks might bring forward their invasion." "Yes," the mayorman replied and left quickly. The king walked over to the high priest, and very softly said, "High priest, what do you think?" The high priest transmitted his voice to the king. "Carry on with the original plan to withdraw all the people to Ivo City. Although we've already found the chosen one, I'm afraid it's very hard for him to deal with such a large number of nether sharks with his power alone. We have to be sufficiently prepared." The king nodded thoughtfully. "The nether sharks' movements are very odd this time. I will make a trip to the border personally," the high priest said again. "However, this time," he said it aloud instead of transmitting his voice. "But the chosen one is still waiting for us, high priest." The king was hesitant to speak. Meeting the chosen one would evidently seem more important compared to a small town at the borders. The miracle drug has yet to completely take effect. I reckon we will still need at least 2 hours before we can try to pass the cursed wall." The high priest shook his head. He then waved his hand, and 2 gemstones with a faint gold color appeared on a spell formation beside the altar. The golden light flickered very quickly. "I'll be back quickly." The high priest stepped on the teleportation portal. "High priest, I'll go with you." Gina also stepped on the teleportation portal as well, standing at the side respectfully. Chapter 1089 Confirm Capture. Other than the garrison, the young and strong merfolk from the town had also joined them outside the town to reinforce the defences. The merfolk were all aware of how terrifying the nether sharks were. It was meaningless to run away from the town. For their loved ones in the town, the only thing they could do was stand strong and fight back. Even if they could not defeat the ferocious nether sharks, as long as they could last till the reinforcements from Bullock City came, there would be hope for Veril Town. This was destined to be a deadly battle. They had nowhere to retreat. It would only take a large nether shark 2 cycles to destroy a small town. The large whirlwind that spanned almost 100 meters could easily destroy all buildings in its way. The young duel was standing by the town's wall, gripping tightly his spear gun. The black spear gun appeared fairly old, but the tip was very sharp. This was the spear gun his father used in war. 8 years ago, as the captain of the garrison in Veril Town, his father died in the mouth of a nether shark with his mother, who was also a warrior, in order to protect the moving townspeople, leaving only this spear gun behind. 8 years was long enough to make many memories faint, but he could never forget that scene when his parents got torn apart by the whirlwind. All these years, he had been training hard with the spear gun just so that he would be able to fight the nether sharks and take revenge for his parents one day. Duel, go back and protect Kelly, Cadole said as he walked towards Duel. Being here is the best way to protect her, Duel said with resolution as he looked at Cadole. That is a large nether shark. It's pointless for you to be here. Cadole frowned. He had watched this child grow up. His father was one of the rising potentials in the younger generation, so he could not watch this boy court death. My parents knew that it was pointless for them to stay back then, but didn't they still do that anyway? Duel shook his head. He tightened his grip on the spear gun, his eyes glimmered with conviction. This child, Cadole saw the shadow of that burly man from back then in him. In the same way, once he set his mind on something, no one was able to talk him out of it. Cadole sighed and turned to leave. After that, he beckoned a warrior to watch out for the boy. Incoming, a merfolk exclaimed. The huge whirlwind could be clearly seen. When large rocks were sucked into the whirlwind, they were immediately crushed into infinite small pieces by the grayish-black wind. Fishes swam away in all directions, terrified, but that whirlwind was just like a huge vortex of suction that sucked the fishes in crazily. After that, the fishes disappeared. In that large grayish-black vortex, one could faintly make out a large silhouette. There were 2 smaller whirlwinds following behind. As the 3 whirlwinds made their way over, they left 3 deep trenches in the ground and a mess in their wake. The merfolk warriors' faces turned pale when they saw that scene. Although they would be attacked by the nether whirlwind every year, Veril had yet to face such a horrifying nether shark alone. Cadole raised his trident high with both hands, and loudly shouted, "For Veril! For our loved ones! Be prepared to fight, my brave warriors!" "Fight!" the other mermen warriors shouted together, looking ready to welcome the battle ahead. Duel also shouted loudly with the rest. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hand holding the spear gun was slightly trembling not from fear, but from excitement. Ha! Cadole appeared outside of the defense shield in the blink of an eye. The trident in his hand glowed with bluish-violet light as he slashed out with all his might towards that whirlwind. An enormous bluish-violet trident appeared, and went straight for that giant whirlwind that was 100 meters tall and wide. The trident grew bigger as it approached the whirlwind, and it was 100 meters long in the blink of an eye, bringing with it a giant current, and crashing towards the whirlwind. Everyone watched this scene with wide eyes. Cadole was the strongest out of all of them. Only he could stop that large nether shark. Boom! The large trident and the whirlwind crashed into each other, creating a loud boom. The unstoppable whirlwind only halted for a while, and there were no traces of damage on it. Although that whirlwind stopped, it was still spinning crazily, and its wind was like an infinite amount of sharp blades, slashing that giant trident. Sparks flew, and the trident was shortened at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, the 3 prongs had already disappeared, and it was just a matter of time before that long pole would be ground up as well. Meanwhile, that nether whirlwind just appeared a little smaller, and that shadow in that whirlwind became more obvious. Its large size put everyone under tremendous pressure. Together. Cadole was not discouraged by that. The large nether shark's whirlwind was difficult to defeat in the first place, and that was within his expectations. Besides, this nether shark was already about to evolve into a large nether shark. His goal was just to buy as much time as he could. Countless spells flew out from the defense shield, looking like rays of light flying towards the three whirlwinds. The spells blasted near the whirlwinds, exploding like beautiful fireworks, but the three whirlwinds did not move an inch. The merfolk's magic was completely useless in front of the nether whirlwind. It could not even penetrate the whirlwind, much less cause any substantial damage to the nether shark within it. It could not even break through the nether shark's outermost line of defense. This huge difference was indeed despair-inducing. SSSSS. At this moment, a sharp shrill sound came from within one of the whirlwinds, and was carried over by a water current. The largest whirlwind started spinning at a greater speed, and whatever was left of the trident exploded into small pieces. The whirlwind came speeding over towards Veril town, making stones fly in the air. Oh no! Cadole knitted his brows tightly together, and went straight towards the whirlwind with a trident in his hand. The merfolk were equally strong and powerful. The merfolk warriors were even fearless. The bluish-violet light from the trident enveloped him, and he soon became a ray of light bolting towards that whirlwind. The merfolk's magic was unable to cause any damage to the whirlwind, so the only way the mermen warriors could win against the nether sharks was to attack from close proximity. Very quickly, a few merfolk powerhouses dashed out of the defense shield, moving toward the other two whirlwinds. They were in charge of holding the two middle-sized nether sharks back. The trident made a hole in that whirlwind, and Cadole entered. The whirlwind stopped advancing. A small silhouette and a large shadow started engaging in a fierce battle within that whirlwind. Turbulence started brewing in the seawater, and there were occasional sharp shrieks coming from within the whirlwind. The battle did not last long before Cadole flew out from the whirlwind like a helpless shrimp, covered in blood. He only managed to stop himself from moving back with the trident that was broken into two when he was about to reach the defense shield. He spat a mouthful of blood out, and stared indignantly at the large nether shark that was no longer calling out the whirlwind. Fight till the end. The last of the merfolk warriors' fear and desperation had fueled their conviction. Even if they wouldn't win, they would not retreat. The only way was to fight till their death. The nether shark looked at the merfolk with killing intent. It revealed its 2 rows of razor-sharp teeth. They are the tastiest food every year. Although they're small, they love to struggle, so it's even more interesting during the hunt. Bam! Just then, an unknown object fell from above and landed with a loud bang, right on top of that nether shark's head. That nether shark, which was prepared to start its hunt, was suddenly smashed to the bottom of the sea as though it was hit by a heavy hammer, causing the stones at the bottom of the sea to fly up. Assessment: serious injury to 1 large nether shark and 2 middle-sized nether sharks. Confirm capture. A robotic voice sounded from within the cockpit of the submarine. I am not interested. Didn't they say the nether sharks were very strong, the whirlwinds were invincible, and their rate of recovery was very fierce? Didn't they say the nether sharks were vicious, and they ruled the sea and harvested the merfolk? Why did they feel like such weaklings? Mag lowered his head to look at that big black shark underneath. It had a giant silver vortex mark on its head. However, he felt that the information that he had received wasn't very accurate. Wow, that was such a big fish. It can be eaten for many days if we make it into a grilled fish, right? Amy cried out softly with stars in her eyes. There are so many mermaids there who look just like Big Sister Gina. They all have beautiful fish tails. Anna said, pointing in the direction of Veril town. Then, feeling rather surprised, she continued, there are male mermaids too. The lady's conversation snapped Mag back to reality. He thought for a while before pressing the confirm button in front of him. Instruction to capture confirmed. Target, 3 nether sharks. The electronic voice sounded again. Cadole and the group of merfolk who were ready to give up their lives to protect Veril were all staring at that unknown giant glowing object with disbelief right now. The bright glow wasn't glaring, yet it made that giant glowing object look exceptionally grand and solemn. The big nether shark that wasn't even injured under their attacks was now lying motionless in the deep pit at the bottom of the sea. The big guy who was known for its fierce defense capabilities and regeneration was knocked out so easily. Is this the arrival of God? Some merfolk cried out. Apart from that, they couldn't think of any other existence that could achieve something like that. Such strong power. Duel, who was prepared to launch into an attack with his spear, opened his mouth wide and stared at the giant being that appeared suddenly in astonishment. That obviously wasn't a giant fish. It looked more like the legendary magical instrument that was drawn upon the altar. Is this really God? Duel's heart began to beat frantically. Besides avenging his parents, his greatest wish was to go beyond that cursed barrier that he was already so sick of staring at, and look at what was out there. If God had really appeared, then his wish could have the chance to come true. The High Priest and Gina had just stepped out of the teleportation range a moment before the glowing object descended from the sky. The High Priest had already raised up the staff in his hand before a beam of light descended from the sky with an unbelievable speed and slammed that nether shark to the bottom of the sea. This is the work of God. The High Priest was still holding up his staff and staring at the glowing object as his body began to tremble uncontrollably. His wrinkled face was all worked up. Gina was also staring at that scene with a shocked expression. Even she had to give her all to tackle the big nether shark, and even then she could only slow down its attack. It was impossible for her to kill it with a single strike. Work of God? If God has appeared personally, then why would he send Mr. Mag? She thought, feeling confused. All the merfolk there were awestruck. Meanwhile, the 2 medium-sized nether sharks saw the big nether shark being knocked unconscious out of the blue. They let out a shrill cry, and they stirred up a violent whirlwind and dashed toward the submarine instead of retreating. How dare you be disrespectful to God? The High Priest's expression became austere, and the staff in his hands began to glow. Right at this moment, the glowing object suddenly released 2 visible ripples toward those 2 whirlwinds that were dozens of meters tall. Poof! The ripples went through, and the indestructible, destructive whirlwinds were instantly disintegrated with a gentle pop. The 2 black sharks over 80 meters long that were hiding in the whirlwinds were revealed. The sudden disappearance of the whirlwinds gave the 2 big sharks a shock too. However, before they could react, 2 silver-colored metallic balls had already exploded in front of them. They became 2 silver-colored metallic nets, and engulfed the 2 nether shark. Then, they instantly contracted. SSSS, the 2 nether sharks let out a sad cry before sinking to the bottom of the sea stiffly. They landed on the seafloor, unable to move at all. Only their red eyes could still move around in fear. Soon, another silver metallic ball exploded above the head of that big-sized nether shark, and turned into an even bigger net that engulfed that nether shark. Their surroundings became silent immediately, and all the merfolk gulped in unison. Such a strong power! If that earlier colossal was categorized as violence aesthetics, then the easy unraveling of the nether whirlwind and subduing the 2 medium-sized nether sharks effortlessly were totally beyond their wildest imagination. It even gave them an illusion that the powerful nether sharks were as helpless as those crescent fish in front of the glowing object. They couldn't even struggle. That's so awesome! Gina also had an awestruck expression on her face. This was totally beyond the scope of battle. This looked more like a fishing operation. Their strength was definitely not on an equal footing. God bless Lantist! Is everything finally going to end? The High Priest lowered his staff gradually. He arranged his clothes before swimming toward that bright, glowing object slowly. High Priest, Gina stared at the back of the High Priest. She hesitated for a moment before she decided to follow after him. The nether sharks have been successfully subdued. The electronic voice rang out in the submarine's cabin again. Mag blinked as he stared at the 3 nether sharks engulfed by the silver netting at the bottom and the stunned merfolk. His expression became a little weird. The system's submarine Xiaolong was too powerful. It was a submarine that was in fact a deep-sea overlord. The nether sharks that gave the merfolk a massive headache were only slightly bigger aquatic products in front of this submarine. They were defenseless against it. System, what are those fishing nets made of? Are we sure they can't struggle out of them? Mag asked curiously. The fish nets were made by this system using super nanomaterials. Their strength is way above the nether shark's strength limit. There is no need to worry that they would get out. However, do you want to reconsider buying this Xiaolong deep submergence submarine? With it, you will become the undisputed superpower of the sea. The system's smug voice appeared as it grabbed the opportunity to sell the submarine. Excuse me, I am not interested, Mag rejected decisively. That's so awesome. In the submarine's cabin, everyone was looking at Mag in astonishment. They were all shocked by the earlier scene. Elizabeth could clearly sense the potential of that huge nether shark down below. It was an overlord of the sea with an 8th tier power, and it was knocked out by this weird-looking thing steered by Mag in such a ridiculous manner. The other 2 nether sharks who had a power in between 6th tier and 7th tier were equally difficult to handle in this deep sea. But they, too, were easily subdued by Mag. Yes. It looks exactly like how Big Sister Gina had drawn. Anna nodded before looking at Mag with adoration, and said, Uncle Mag, you did it. You saved this town exactly like how Big Sister Gina drew. I knew it. Father is the most formidable. Amy grabbed Mag's arm happily with a smug expression on her face. She looked out and suddenly froze. She pointed out there, and said, Isn't that Big Sister Gina? Is she here to welcome us? Mag looked over when he heard that. Gina was following behind an old merman who was wearing a black cape. They were swimming toward the submarine. Gina and the old merman stopped about 100 meters away from the glowing object. They placed their hands over their chests and bowed respectfully before the old one said, Esteemed spirit, I am Dexter, the High Priest of Lantist, your most faithful believer. I thank you for the people of Lantist. It's the High Priest and Princess Gina. Are they here to welcome the Holy Spirit? Then, we shall quickly do so too. The merfolk of Veril soon noticed the arrival of the High Priest and Gina. They, too, rapidly bowed respectfully toward the submarine in the midst of their surprise. Gina is the princess of the merfolk. That old merman seems to have an even higher status than Gina. However, what is he talking about? I have no inkling at all, so what do I do now? Mag heard that merman, but he had only heard him. He didn't understand him at all. Mag scratched his head. The language barrier was a big headache. If things continued smoothly, he would most likely have to negotiate with this old merman about the setup of the fishery. The language barrier would be his greatest obstacle. After all, not every merfolk was as innocent as Gina. Unknown language detected. Collection of the language samples in progress. Sufficient samples collected. Analysis in progress. Analysis of the language samples collected complete. The language was successfully deciphered. Loading into the language vault. Do you need simultaneous interpretation? Right at this moment, the electronic voice spoke out again. Hey! Mag was stunned as he stared at the red confirm button that was blinking in front of him. His eyes lit up instantly. He hadn't expected this submarine to have the language learning and simultaneous interpretation function. But, Mag quickly regained his wits. He unhappily said in his heart, System, you could have already translated the merfolk's language a long time ago, right? He thought back on how he had to communicate with Gina daily using hand gestures for the past few weeks. He even had to guess for the simplest interactions, and it was a very difficult process. In the end, a simple simultaneous interpretation function of the system could have solved the problem. Mag was dumbfounded. System. The host didn't take the initiative to ask. Mag raised his eyebrows. In this case, he had indeed forgotten about the first rule that he could always ask the system whenever he encountered a problem. Hey? What did it just say? Father, did you hide a little elf here? Amy scanned around, trying to find where the voice came from. I heard something about simultaneous interpretation. But, what is that? Yabimiya said with confusion. Everyone looked toward Mag. This was made by Mag. The unbelievable speed and the ability to observe the underwater world safely had already awed them. It's just a little invention. Now we can understand what the merfolk are saying. Mag shrugged as he tapped on the confirm button for simultaneous interpretation calmly. Esteemed spirit, I am Dexter, the High Priest of Lantist, your most faithful believer. The High Priest's voice appeared again, but this time, it was translated into the continent's common tongue. Esteemed spirit. Mag cocked an eyebrow. This High Priest of Lantist seemed to have mistaken something. Gina had always called him the Chosen One. It seemed like the High Priest had mistaken him for a god after witnessing his earlier actions. We can really understand them now. But Father, why is he calling us esteemed spirit? Are we really that formidable? Amy looked at Mag strangely. That is a 10th tier great magic caster, Elizabeth said softly as she looked at the High Priest. Then, she looked at those merfolk and the little town slightly farther away, a hint of ponder on her face. She hadn't expected there really was an unknown merfolk species under the sea, and there was even an unknown number of 10th tier powerhouses among them. If the merfolk could escape their shackles at the bottom of the sea, they definitely would have a great impact on the current order on the Norland continent. This should be a person with a high status among the merfolk. He could have mistaken our identity, Mag said to the ladies. Besides sending Gina home, the purpose of this trip is to set up a supply chain for the nether shark's lips and fins. A dish that is going to debut in the restaurant will need to have these two ingredients. Therefore, I will need the merfolk's help. Then, why don't we just ask Big Sister Gina? She will definitely help us because she is one of us, Amy said smilingly. Yes. Gina is awfully nice. She will definitely provide the ingredients for the restaurant. Mia nodded too. Gina is not able to decide about this. Mag shook his head as he looked at the pious-looking High Priest. He should be the one who can call the shots. Then, what do we need to do now? Elizabeth asked Mag. The nether sharks were a very powerful existence to the merfolk. It wasn't a reasonable request to ask them to risk their lives to catch the nether sharks for the restaurant. Hence, Gina indeed wasn't in the position to decide. The High Priest was standing there respectfully with hooded eyes. High Priest Gina wanted to speak after waiting for a long time for the glowing object to reply. The High Priest raised his hand, and softly said, "Let's wait quietly." Gina swallowed her words and lowered her head. She didn't attempt to talk anymore. Since he is already mistaken, let's bring this mistake up a notch. A smile appeared on Mag's lips. He turned the light's effects to the maximum, and tuned the voice changer to the holy man mode. He gestured the ladies to keep quiet as he tapped open the microphone of the simultaneous interpretation. Let's skip the formalities. My chosen one is already waiting for you on the surface of the sea. He will show Lantist the right way. Chapter 1092 Goddess Spokesperson. A solemn and dignified voice greeted every merfolk's ears. The High Priest lifted his head. His body trembled gently and tears glistened in his eyes. 1,000 years. Lantist was forsaken by God for 1,000 years. Finally, God favored Lantist again. The man I have chosen will help you. He is a good man. The solemn and dignified voice appeared again, and the light on that holy vessel began to shine brighter and brighter before it changed into a beam of light and disappeared. He is talking about Mr. Mag. He really is a good man. Even God thinks he is too, Gina murmured softly. Has God left? The merfolk raised their heads and looked at the 3 nether sharks that were bound tightly and left behind. The holy vessel that carried God had disappeared. The high priest stood up gradually and looked at the vague beam of light that disappeared completely before he retrieved his gaze. He said to the merfolk in front of the Veril town, God is still favoring us. Lantist will be rid of the curse. Yes. The merfolk let out a loud cheer. Get rid of the curse and leave the bottom of the sea. Elation appeared on Duel's face. He raised his head to look at that dark barrier. He would be able to see the outside world soon. Then, his gaze landed on those 3 tightly bound nether sharks. After hesitating for a while, he gathered his courage and faced the high priest, who was healing the town's mayor Catol with magic, and asked, High priest, may I kill 1 nether shark, please? The high priest looked at Duel in surprise. You are not afraid of it. They killed my parents, but I am not afraid of them. I want to kill them to avenge my parents. Duel shook his head and grasped the spear in his hands tightly as he stared at the 3 nether sharks. The high priest stared at Duel for a moment before a smile appeared on his wrinkly face. He nodded and smiled. God subdued those 3 nether sharks. I guess he would agree to let you handle one of them. Thank you, high priest. Duel was ecstatic. You should be thanking God. The high priest kept the magic ball, and the wounds on Catol's body were all healed. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Duel said respectfully as he swam toward a middle-sized nether shark with his spear. A half-arm-long golden-red beam lit up on the spear. Duel used all his strength and stabbed the spear into the vortex marking at the top of the nether shark's head. He had long heard that it was the nether shark's only weakness. SSSS, the nether shark let out a shrill cry and started to struggle crazily, but it was tightly restrained by the silver fish net. It didn't struggle for long before the cries stopped. The nether shark completely stopped moving. Duel withdrew his spear, and fresh blood squirted out from the nether shark's vortex. Father! Mother! I will avenge you! Duel mumbled with tears rolling down his face. The people of Veril had come out. Duel! Kelly emerged from the crowd and hugged Duel, tears flowing down her face too. You are the mayor of Veril, right? Pass down this order. All the merfolk in town will proceed to Ivo City, the high priest instructed Catol. Yes, Catol replied respectfully. The high priest looked at Duel and the dead nether shark with an appreciative smile. That little chap has potential. If he is willing, have him join the garrison when he reaches Ivo City. Say it's my instruction. Joy appeared on Catol's face as he nodded. I think that chap will be very willing. Gina, let's go, the high priest said as a light golden spell formation started to appear at the bottom of his feet. Gina stepped into the range of the spell formation, and the 2 of them disappeared in a burst of golden light. Gina, tell me in detail about the Chosen One and your experiences in the past few days. Lantist's future is held in his hands. Mr. Mag, he is a good man. The submarine increased its speed instantly as it left the bottom of the sea. It only decreased its speed when it reached the depth of 5,000 meters, and began to slowly rise to the surface. Father, did you tell them a lie earlier? Amy blinked her eyes at Mag with a shocked expression. This was the first time she saw her father lie. Everyone in the submarine was looking at Mag with a surprised expression. In their impression, Mag had always been an honest and trustworthy person. That wasn't lying. It's to build a more stable and solid friendship for both parties. Mag shook his head, and seriously said, Am I not a good man? Everyone gave that a serious thought and felt relieved instantaneously. Of course Mr. Mag was a good man. If they thought about it in that way, he indeed wasn't lying. I knew father wouldn't lie. A radiant smile appeared on Amy's face again. Mag felt a relief in his heart. As the living example for Amy, his honest persona couldn't break down. Moreover, he didn't do anything evil. He only took advantage of the situation to make upcoming negotiation easier. He would still help Lantist with all he could. A big school of fish swam by the submarine. Ugly Duckling, which was already used to lying against the transparent window, began to swipe at those fishes that swam closeby. It looked rather anxious as it scratched the glass. Amy came forward and smilingly asked, "Ugly Duckling, should I release you out there?" Ugly Duckling nodded initially before quickly regaining its wits. It turned and peered at Amy with aggrievement. "Are you the devil?" They were sightseeing the beautiful scenery of the underwater world through the transparent submarine, and Mag had caught a few fishes that looked nice to eat with the capture device. He estimated the merfolk should be coming up soon, so he maneuvered the submarine back to the surface and returned to the wooden boat. In the middle of the altar, the high priest solemnly said to all the merfolk standing in front of the altar, "Mr. Mag is the spokesperson of God and Lantist's savior too. We have to accord him our utmost respect and treatment." "Yes," all the merfolk replied in unison with an equally serious expression. The high priest had already shown them the scene where the Holy Spirit descended and subdued the 3 nether sharks effortlessly. There was only adoration in the merfolk's hearts right now. The king, too, stepped forward, and gravely said to everyone, "Lantist's future is in your hands now." Mag and the ladies had just got back to the boat, but before they could even begin to enjoy another feast, a series of organized drumming and conscious trumpeting could be heard. As sea water in front of the boat split open in the center, 300 merfolk powerhouses were slowly rising up from below, with the high priest in black magician robes and Gina standing in the middle. "They're here." Mag's eyes lit up. He had already bought the simultaneous interpretation system from System with 250 copper coins, so from now on, he could communicate freely with the merfolk. However, what the heck was that pageantry? Mag stared at those merfolk holding all kinds of strange musical instruments in a neat formation. Did Gina give all the mud casings to the merfolk's guards of honor? Wow, this is spectacular! Amy's eyes widened as she gazed at those merfolk playing the instruments intently. Everyone on the boat was watching this scene in amazement. What a powerful contingent! A hint of amazement appeared in Elizabeth's frosty eyes. This wasn't an ordinary contingent of guards of honor. Apart from that high priest, there were another 10 10th tier magic casters in the contingent. The rest were also either 8th tier or 9th tier powerhouses. This level of power had already surpassed goblins and dwarves. In fact, Mag had also sensed the power of these merfolk. Besides being astonished, he began to have some new ideas in his heart. A power that hadn't revealed itself for 1,000 years. A powerful tribe that nobody knew. If he was able to make use of them, this could be his super trump card. "Mr. Mag." Gina gave Mag a bright smile before whispering to the high priest next to her, "High priest, that is Mr. Mag, and the adorable little girl is his daughter, Amy. The other beautiful ladies are the restaurant's service staff. The chosen one." The high priest looked at Mag first. He had already seen this human in the revelation 2 weeks ago. Seeing him in person now, he seemed to be an ordinary human. He couldn't sense any trace of magic from him, but there was a very unique disposition on him that others couldn't ignore. Then, his gaze landed on Amy at the side. His pupils constricted, and a hint of astonishment flashed through his eyes. A 4-year-old 6th tier half-elf magic caster. There actually was such a genius like her in this world. Then, his gaze scanned the others on the boat. An 8th tier frost dragon, a 7th tier spatial magic caster. Just as Gina had said, the power of this restaurant's service staff was on a whole new level. This made him respect Mag even more. He indeed was God's chosen one. The high priest bowed a little, and gratefully said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Mag. I am the high priest of Lantist, Dexter. Thank you very much for saving Gina and coming all the way here to gift us the miracle drugs." Gina peered at Mag before softly saying, "High priest, Mr. Mag doesn't understand our language." "I may need, you are being too kind, High Priest. All these could just be fate. Miss Gina had helped me a lot in my restaurant too, Mag said in fluent Lantistine with a smile on his face. Looking at Gina, whose mouth was slightly agape in disbelief, Mag explained, I can understand Lantistine now. This must be a blessing bestowed by the Holy Spirit. The High Priest's eyes lit up. Lantist had been separated from the outside world for 1,000 years. They couldn't understand the languages out there. Similarly, the outsiders naturally wouldn't understand Lantistine, either. This made him feel even more sure that Mag was the spokesperson of God, as he had gained unbelievable power from him. His expression became even more respectful. Gina obviously thought that too. She was gazing at Mag with little stars in her eyes. He indeed was Mr. Mag, as he was super formidable. Mag looked at the High Priest's facial expression, and had already made his plans for the upcoming negotiation. The hoodwink that he pulled earlier had produced an excellent result. Hey, Father can speak mermaid language now. Amy stared at Mag curiously. The others on the boat were amazed too. Mag's earlier invention that could translate the merfolk's language into the continent's common tongue was already impressive enough. Now, he even learned how to speak the merfolk's language too. Was this another of his new inventions too? High Priest, have them stop the music first. Mad addressed the High Priest with a smile. Even though the music that these merfolk played was very forceful and uplifting, it wasn't very suitable for a negotiation. Stop! The High Priest raised his hand, and the music stopped instantly. All the merfolk lowered their drums and conches and looked at Mag with gratitude. After all, they were still respectable powerhouses among the merfolk with an 8th tier and higher powers. It was a little demeaning for them to be playing musical instruments here. After the music stopped, Mag got straight to the point with the High Priest. About Lantist's predicament, Gina has mentioned it to me before we came, and I have received some special revelations from him. I can help Lantist solve the problem of the cursed barrier and the nether sharks. However, I also need Lantist to provide some help and promises. The High Priest's eyes lit up. God must have given Mag some revelations, so he was very confident that Mag could solve Lantist's survival crisis. As long as Lantist could survive, any terms could be negotiated. Mr. Mag, what do you need Lantist to do? What promises do you need us to make? Please state your terms, and we will accommodate them as best as we can, the High Priest said. The first term, Lantist has to promise not to invade the continent or get involved in the fight for territories for 100 years. The second term, after Lantist is freed, you have to help me do 3 tasks unconditionally. The exact terms are still undecided, but I can promise I won't make Lantist pay a price that it can't accept. The third term, I need Lantist to help me build a demersal fishing ground for nether sharks to provide the nether sharks' lips and fins for my restaurant consistently. I will tell you more about the building of the fishery and daily operations later. Smiling, Mag said to the High Priest, these are my requests. I hope the High Priest could take them into consideration. The High Priest showed signs of deep thought on his face. The other merfolk powerhouses, too, had a thoughtful look. Mag stood at the side calmly, waiting for their decision. The High Priest had a short hydroacoustic communication with a few of them. After a moment of silence, he said to Mag with a solemn expression, if Mr. Mag can promise that Lantist will never be harassed by the nether sharks, and every one of our people can go through the cursed barrier freely, I can make the promise on behalf of Lantist in exchange for those 3 terms of yours. Chapter 1094 I am willing. Since you guys could come here to talk to me, I guess you could already confirm that I do have the ability to allow you to go through the cursed barrier. However, there are many of you in Lantist, and I can only provide a limited number of mud casings periodically. Hence, I cannot promise how long I will need to take to give all Lantistines this freedom, Mag said to the High Priest with equal solemnity. But, I can promise from today onward, Lantistines will no longer be harassed by the nether sharks. Lantist will always remember your kindness. The high priest placed his hand across his chest and bowed. He had successfully established a supply chain for nether sharks' lips and fins. Most importantly, he had received a promise from a very powerful tribe to render him help 3 times. This was literally an army suddenly appearing out of nowhere, one with 10 odds 10th tier powerhouses. This was going to be one of his strongest trump cards. Furthermore, no one in this world knew about the existence of such a powerful tribe. A smile also appeared in the high priest's face. This indeed was the guidance of God. From today onward, Lantist was starting a new chapter in its history. No more harassment from nether sharks and a clear hope for the world beyond. This is great. Mr. Mag is truly a good man. An equally radiant smile appeared on Gina's face. Although she didn't expect Mr. Mag to bring up the 3 terms, the result was perfect and the negotiation was smooth. Lantist got a better deal than expected. The others on the boat were dumbfounded for the entire process, as they had no idea what Mag and the high priest were talking about, but they, too, smiled along with them when they saw the merfolk saluting Mag. The negotiation seemed to have gone well. Seems like the negotiation is very successful. So, boss is actually an expert in negotiation too, Yabimiya murmured. Of course, father is very formidable, Amy said proudly. A verbal contract naturally wasn't feasible. Mag took out some pen and paper, and wrote 2 contracts on waterproof paper before signing them together with the high priest. Then, the negotiation was truly considered completed in a satisfactory way. Let's look forward to a fruitful cooperation. Mag extended his hand to the high priest. The high priest was slightly taken aback. It seemed like this was the human social etiquette. After a moment of hesitation, he, too, extended his hand to shake Mag's gently. To a fruitful cooperation. After the signing of the contract, Mag began to instruct the system to prepare the magnetic field interference releasing balls and ultrasonic isolation wall. The former was to destroy the nether sharks' nether whirlwinds and give the merfolk a chance to fight the nether sharks in close combat. The merfolk who knew the nether sharks' weakness didn't fear fighting the nether sharks without their nether whirlwind defenses. The latter was to make sure the nether sharks couldn't get close to the area that was surrounded by the ultrasonic walls created by the magnetic field interference releasing balls. It could be used to build a defensive fortress easily, or build a demersal fishing ground in reverse. There were only 2 buttons for the on/off. It was a foolproof operation, and it was very easy to get the hang of it. Is this the amazing machine that the Holy Spirit used to disable the nether sharks' whirlwinds earlier? The high priest was holding the magnetic interference ball reverently as if he was looking at a priceless treasure. You could say that. Mag nodded, still feeling a little guilty for pretending to be the Holy Spirit. God is so generous to us. The high priest's expression was full of reverence and gratitude. The quantity of magnetic interference balls is limited. However, after releasing it, all the nether sharks' whirlwinds will be disabled within a radius of 1 kilometer. It should be sufficient if used in a squad formation. The number of ultrasonic balls is more than sufficient for you to disperse them around the important cities and towns to form a defensive fortress. During the time of nether sharks' invasion, just retreat into the fortress and wait till they leave. I have already confirmed the location for the nether sharks' fishing grounds. It is right at that big canyon. You can lure an adequate number of nether sharks into the canyon or capture and throw them in. Then, use the ultrasonic walls to block the gaps in the canyon. This is the location map of the canyon and the layout drawing of the ultrasonic balls. Rearing the nether sharks. I am doing this to obtain its shark's fins and shark's lips. Mag continued to inform the high priest in detail about the layout plan, the establishment of the demersal fishing ground for nether sharks, and supply chain. All these were prepared in advance by the system. Mag was simply doing the explanation. Moreover, they were already very simple in the first place. The usually calm high priest was getting increasingly agitated as he listened to Mag. After Mag was done, he excitedly said to Mag, "Mr. Mag is indeed very thoughtful. With these amazing machines, the people of Lantist will never have to fear the harassment from nether sharks any longer. We could even turn the tables around and prey on them. The nether sharks can be considered as a rare species. Maybe the merfolk of Lantist could show a little restraint. Mag thought silently. Of course, he wouldn't voice out such words. For the past 1,000 years, the nether sharks had almost erased Lantist from existence. Countless merfolk perished in the jaws of the nether sharks. He couldn't make himself ask others to be magnanimous. The high priest used the crystal ball to hold the tens of thousands of metallic balls that Mag took out. It seemed like that was some storage equipment with a huge space. Mr. Mag, thank you for everything you have done for Lantist. The nether sharks' invasion is imminent, and I need to return to Lantist to set up everything immediately. I shall bid my farewell now. I will visit you personally to show my gratitude soon. The high priest kept the amazing machines. He was worried about Lantist, so he was prepared to bid farewell to Mag and the ladies. Gina was trying to say something at the side. She glanced at the high priest, and finally decided to keep quiet. Mag saw that, and smilingly said, "High priest, we have established a partnership now, but it is not very convenient for me to come to Lantist. We need a person to send the drug needed for your people to pass through the cursed barrier to Lantist, and someone is required to send the dried shark's fins and lips you harvested to me. May I ask you to send someone to station at my restaurant, please?" Hearing that, the high priest glanced at Gina thoughtfully before he smiled and nodded. Of course. Princess Gina has already spent some time with Mr. Mag, and she is the best among the young generation. She will make sure the drugs and ingredients will be safely delivered. Is it all right if I send her? Gina's eyes lit up as she peered at Mag perturbedly. She wasn't sure if Mr. Mag was willing to let her stay. If Miss Gina is willing, that would be the best. Mag smiled at Gina. I am willing. Gina burst out with an ecstatic smile on her face. Chapter 1095. Otherwise, you are no different from a pig. Gina, do your best to assist Mr. Mag. Do not behave like a princess. He is the benefactor of Lantist, the high priest said to Gina with hydroacoustic communication. Mr. Mag, farewell, the high priest said to Mag and nodded in acknowledgement to the ladies on the boat. His gaze paused when it landed on Amy. He pondered for a while before taking out a small teardrop-shaped blue crystal. He gave it a slight wave, and it became a bracelet with a red thread. The high priest gave the bracelet to Amy as he smilingly said, "This is a hydrophobic crystal. Young lady, you can go anywhere underwater as you please with it. It is a little something for you as our first meeting gift." What an adorable little girl who looked just like a little fairy from heavens. This is a valuable gift. Mag's eyes lit up, and he quickly made Amy express her thanks. What a pretty little bracelet. Thank you, Grandpa Merman, Amy, who took the bracelet, said happily. She put it on her wrist immediately, and gazed at that water droplet against the sun. There was a tiny fish inside which seemed to be swimming under the sunlight. This bracelet that Grandpa Merman gave you allows you to breathe underwater. You will be just like the fishes, Mag said to Amy. Amy's eyes lit up, and she curiously asked, "Really? Then, will I become a little fish? Or, I will become a little mermaid?" "Yes, you can put it that way too." Mag smiled and nodded. After waving goodbye to the high priest and the merfolk powerhouses, Mag turned toward the ladies who were dumbfounded for the whole process, and declared, "Gina will still be staying with us at the restaurant." "Gina is staying. This is great!" Mia exclaimed joyously before hugging Gina, who just transformed her tail into legs and boarded the boat. Everyone else had a smile on their face too. The recent departures of Sally and Shirley made them rather sad. If Gina left as well, the ladies would be sad for an even longer period of time. "Thank you, everyone," Gina said smilingly too. She could sense everyone's love for her. It made her feel touched and glad. Meow Ugly Duckling suddenly poked its head out from a corner and meowed at Gina. It licked its teeth as if it, too, was very happy. Oh! Gina was startled, and almost fell into the water from the edge of the boat. She made everyone laugh. It was only noon, so Mag wasn't in a hurry to return. He took out the seafood that he had just caught, and prepared for another round of seafood party. After enjoying a scrumptious seafood feast, Mag and the ladies were taking a break on the boat before preparing for their return journey. Waves appeared on the sea's surface, and two merfolk appeared, carrying a wooden box. They respectfully said to Mag, "Mr. Mag, the High Priest sent us to show you a sample of the shark's fins and shark's lips. May we ask, are they up to your standards?" Mag took the wooden box and opened it up to have a look. There were a pair of crystal clear shark's fins and a pair of fresh shark's lips lying on crushed ice. Their cuttings were of very high standards. "Very good. We can just use them as our standard." Mag nodded with satisfaction. The merfolk were efficient people. He liked them. Ding! "Congratulations, host, you have successfully found a suitable shark's fins and shark's lips supplier and established a stable supply chain. Furthermore, you have taken an important step in your journey to become the god of cookery. The settlement of the mission reward, 0.5 strength point awarded." Right at this moment, the system's voice appeared in Mag's head. Perfect! Mag's eyes lit up. After this 0.5 strength point was activated, he would be able to advance to 8th tier officially. 8th tier, a watershed tier. Only after advancing to the 8th tier power could he be considered as having advanced combat abilities. After a knight's power reached the 8th tier, he could hack in half a rock that could only be surrounded by 3 men linking their arms together with a single strike. His power and speed would be better than a cheetah's. Coupled with the right techniques, he would be untraceable. And to Mag, the most important part was that he could finally use the really awesome techniques in his mind battle techniques. A magic caster's domain and a knight's battle technique were both powers given after they reached the advanced level. The battle techniques had already transcended beyond the range of the combat techniques, and each individual knight would have their own distinct differentiation. Some knights' battle techniques were given the ability to strike across an empty space. For example, long-range blade attacks. Meanwhile, others fortified their combat techniques, for example, saber projection plus 49m Alex's battle techniques were even more special. After all, there wouldn't be another knight who was as awesome as him in this world. He chose to fortify his sword. Although it looked simple and brainless, it made the operability of the sword become immensely powerful. And because of this, he came up with countless amazing methods to use his sword. For example, flying swords. Of course, he wasn't like those people on the path of cultivation to gain spiritual enlightenment. Instead, he was using his terrifying control power and battle technique to control the longsword, and let it achieve the ability of a flying sword. The usage was similar to darts, but even more abstruse. Of course, he seldom used that trick, and not many people knew about it. However, it indeed was very awesome. Mag suppressed the commotion in his heart, and indicated to the system that he wasn't in a hurry to activate it. He bade farewell to the two merfolk, and then shut the icebox. He would be able to make his first pot of Buddha jumps over the wall with the shark's lips and fins that he was bringing back. Of course, he wasn't going to waste them. "All right, we've already had a day of fun. It's time to embark on our return journey," Mag said with a smile as he stopped Amy, who was about to toss Ugly Duckling into the sea after tying the hydrophobic crystal to its neck. "Meow, meow, meow." Ugly Duckling extended 2 little paws to grab onto Mag's arms as if it was holding onto its last lifeline. Its eyes were full of fear. "It's all right, Ugly Duckling. With this hydrophobic crystal, you will be able to breathe underwater just like the fishes. You can only be considered a real duck after you learn how to swim." Amy squashed Ugly Duckling's fat cheeks as she disdainfully said, "Otherwise, you are no different from a pig." Meow Ugly Duckling whined pitifully and stared at its own fat belly in silence. All right, it can swim on our next trip. It's time for us to go home. Mag saved Ugly Duckling with a smile. He could empathize with the fear of the sea Ugly Duckling had. All right, then we will swim after we get back. That fountain in the square is good enough too, Amy mumbled and nodded after giving it some thought. Meow Ugly Duckling, which thought it had escaped from an ordeal, immediately rolled its eyes over and fainted in Mag's arms. Everyone packed up and went home on Elizabeth, who transformed into a frost dragon. That wooden boat handcrafted by Ferris was docked on an isolated island nearby so they could use it again for their next trip on the sea. Mia stretched out her arms, and joyfully said, "What an interesting day." It was getting late at night. In Rodu, a certain famous gourmet magazine press Hall magazine press was still brightly lit. Even with the many accolades, only Gino and a few editors at Hall knew the press was facing the situation of imminent retrenchment of staff and closing down with the decline in sales volume of the few leading magazines. Even though their people lived to eat, Rodu's gourmet foods had all been described in the magazines. Rodu was known as a gourmet paradise. However, no matter how beautiful the paradise was, they could get sick of it one day too. When the few beloved food critics began to rehash, and could no longer discover new delicacies from the streets, Hall magazine press inevitably went into a decline. As the editor-in-chief, Gino had come up with many ideas before. He even requested that culinary reviewers had to submit new ideas before he would publish their articles in the magazines. But those articles that were scraped together or even worse, made up didn't increase the sales. Instead, they damaged the magazine press's decades-old hard-earned reputation. The entire industry was facing a harsh winter, and Hall magazine press was feeling the extreme coldness. "Chief! Chief!" A young man pushed open the office's door and rushed in. Gino wasn't affronted by the young man's brashness. He quickly strode forward, and nervously asked the young man, "How is it? What are the sales volume for Food Forest and Mediterranean?" These two magazines were the leading magazines of Hall magazine press. If these two magazines' latest issues didn't reach the sales target set by the conglomerate, which was 50,000 copies in total sales in the Rodu market, Hall magazine press would be repositioned to produce adult magazines. He had been an editor with Hall for 30 years, from an intern editor all the way till Hall became the most influential gourmet magazine press. How could he allow something like that to happen? If this month's issues couldn't achieve the sale targets, and he couldn't change the decision of the conglomerate behind the magazine press, then it was time for him to leave. The sales of Food Forest is 12,000 copies, the sales of Mediterranean is 18,000, the young man said as he panted. 30,000 copies. We still didn't reach the target, Gino stumbled 2 steps backward with a distraught expression. Even though the sales had increased quite a bit as compared to the previous month, 30,000 copies was still quite far from the target of 50,000 copies agreed upon. When the magazine press was at its peak, just the sales volume of Mediterranean alone could reach 50,000 copies, which was the best in the industry. But a single issue's sales volume could never exceed 50,000 copies now. He knew people still loved the good food. It was because it had been a long time since the appearance of good foods and words that could surprise the people. Gino's gaze dimmed as he reached out to pat the young man who'd just entered the industry with his foodie's dream. He didn't know how to console him. From today onward, he would be doing erotic magazines. That young man finally exhaled, and agitatedly said, "Chief, we have reprinted the current issue of Vegetarianism for 10 times. Just the sales volume in Rodu alone has exceeded 100,000 copies and the distributors are still asking for more reprints. We have surpassed the target." Gino, who still tried to console him, didn't even get the chance to speak when the words of the young editor shocked him. Gino grabbed hold of that young editor's shoulder and disbelievingly asked, "What? What did you say?" Even though Vegetarianism was one of Hall's famous magazines, due to its small target audience, its sales volume at its peak was only 10,000 copies, and now it was being propped up by its main vegetarian food reviewer, Derek. The sales for each monthly issue was at a stable 5,000 copies. How did the sales volume suddenly increase to 100,000 copies? That young editor repeated, the sales of the latest issue of Vegetarianism have exploded. Just the sales volume in the Rodeo market alone has exceeded 100,000 copies, and the distributors are asking for reprints. The estimated total sales could reach 150,000 copies. Maybe, even more. 150,000 copies, Gino murmured as he plopped onto the sofa behind him with a dumbfounded look. During Hall's peak period, the monthly sales of Meatitarian in Rodeau's market had reached 72,000 copies, and it left an interesting mark in the history of culinary magazines. It was almost deemed as the peak that could never be surpassed. But now, the niche Vegetarianism had reached 100,000 copies, and it was still going strong. It could even reach a horrifying 150,000 copies. Are we going crazy? Gino mumbled to himself. Nobody would dare to cheat on such issues. The data had to be correct. The top sales for this month had to be Vegetarianism, and it would be a peak that the entire industry looked up to. Yes, it's crazy. That young editor was also very excited. His reaction wasn't any better than his chief's when he first received the report. The printing plant is still reprinting non-stop, and yet it still can't meet the demand. There are even readers saying that we should just print out Derek's food review. Chief, what do we do now? Derek. Gino's eyes lit up as he immediately got up to rummage through the pile of manuscripts on his table. He took out a sample manuscript which was signed by Derek from the very bottom. As he was trying his best to boost the sales volume, he had focused all his energy on the top 2 magazines. The other magazines were finalized by the other deputy editors. Although the sample manuscript of Vegetarianism was sent to his table, he overlooked it altogether. The best vegetarian dish of the year, a redefinition of life's, world's, and values outlook. An unexpected windfall from Chaos City, eggplant with garlic sauce. Gino read the main title and subheading softly with surprise in his eyes. Derek and him were already old friends. He knew Derek was a low-profile person, and his writing style was rigorous and simple. He hadn't expected him to use titles that were so different from his usual style. There are delicacies in Chaos City too. Gino said to himself before continuing to read. Under the invitation of the president of Chaos City's Food Association, I went to Chaos City. As he proceeded to read the familiar simple words, Gino's expressions began to brighten slowly. The words seemed to have a magical power as the delicious eggplant with garlic sauce seemed to really appear in front of him and follow Derek as he put one piece of eggplant into his mouth. As a senior culinary editor-in-chief with 30 years of experience under his belt, he hadn't been touched by words describing gourmet food for a long time, but after reading Derek's article today, a strong desire had risen within him. He wanted to try that eggplant with garlic sauce himself to see if it was as tantalizing as Derek described. Even a table full of delicious meat dishes looked unworthy in front of the eggplant with garlic sauce now. These are indeed words with soul. A real culinary review article, Gino praised before he grasped his hair in exasperation. Such a marvelous article. Why didn't I discover it earlier? If I had, we could have publicized it in advance, and maybe the sales results could even be higher. Isn't it so? The first print of Vegetarianism was only 5,000 copies. It gained popularity totally through the reader's word of mouth. There wasn't any publicity about it at all. This is indeed a miracle in the magazine's history. The young editor nodded in agreement. Gino closed the manuscript in his hands, and determinedly said, since our publishing plant couldn't catch up with the demand, we will find 2 other publishing companies to work together with us at the same time to print this current issue of Vegetarianism. We are going to extend the miracle of this culinary magazine and show the entire industry hope. Yes. The young editor acknowledged it before putting down the report, and strode out of the office. Derek and this Mamie restaurant are really Hall's saviors. After I am done with the business here, I have to personally go and express my gratitude, Gino said smilingly as he took up the report on the table and read it through attentively. Then, he, too, strode out of the editor-in-chief's office with the report and a folder in his hands. Rodu. The Royal Palace. A resplendent bedchamber with an equal distribution of pink and gold, which made the bedchamber look very young and cute. A maiden wearing luxurious clothes was lying on the bed and reading the latest issue of Vegetarianism engrossingly. After a while, she finally put away the magazine in her hand. A pained expression flashed across her exquisite face as she listened to her rumbling stomach. She flipped over and pressed the magazine to her stomach as she dejectedly said, "My heavens! Why did you let me read this kind of stuff in the middle of the night? It's already the 36th time that I am reading it, but why am I still so hungry after reading it?" "Your Highness, it's your bedtime," a young maid said with a smile next to the bed. Princess Vanessa sat up in bed and looked at the young maid sadly. "Lola, I wish to eat something. The Queen has instructed that you are not allowed to eat before you sleep." The maid, Lola, shook her head at the princess on the bed helplessly. "Can I just eat a cube of sugar?" "A small cube, just a small cube will do." Vanessa extended a little finger. "The Queen has said that you were not allowed to eat any sugar before your teeth were repaired." Lola shook her head as she felt a pang of heartache looking at the black holes on Princess Vanessa's teeth. Princess Vanessa was His Majesty the King's only daughter. She inherited the beauty of the Queen, and was already a little beauty at the age of 16. However, there was a lot of decay and corrosion on her teeth because she liked to eat sugar sneakily before she slept. It was fine if she didn't smile, but when she did, her teeth looked like those belonging to a 70 to 80-year-old person, and it damaged her air of elegance. The magic casters did have a plan to fix them, but the treatment process was longer. Moreover, Princess Vanessa was still eating sweets sneakily, so her treatment wasn't very effective. Because of this, Princess Vanessa hadn't appeared in any public gatherings since she was 14 years old. She locked herself in her bed chambers every day, only visiting the countryside manor occasionally for a vacation. However, she only had Lola with her to serve her. For the past few years, her greatest interest was reading all kinds of gourmet magazines. The king doted on her, so whenever she wanted to eat something, the chef would be invited to the palace to cook for her alone specially. The queen had already given strict orders to Lola. She had to make sure that the princess didn't eat sweets sneakily again, or she would be punished severely. Vanessa stared at Lola for a while before she plopped back onto her bed again. She knew about the queen's orders, and she couldn't let Lola be punished because of her. "Lola, do you believe that the eggplant with garlic sauce is really so delicious? I have already dreamt about it for the past few days. I really want to go to Chaos City to try it myself," Vanessa said softly as she lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling which had luminous pearls embedded into it. "It has to be really delicious if it makes your highness yearn for it so much," Lola said smilingly. "I heard that Mr. Mag took the Best Chef of the Day title on the king's birthday. Every dish he made won the king's praises. Erg! What a regret! Why did I have to go to the countryside for a vacation on those few days? I missed a scrumptious feast." Vanessa kicked her legs with a forlorn expression. Lola covered her properly with her blanket again with a smile as she said, "If you really want to have it, your highness, we could just inform the king, and he would definitely invite Mr. Mag to Rodu to cook the eggplant with garlic sauce for you." "Really?" Vanessa's eyes lit up, and a smile appeared on her lips. "All right, I shall go and look for father tomorrow and ask him to invite Mr. Mag to the palace." Mag finally coaxed the two little ones to sleep. He snuck out of the room gingerly and went to the balcony. The trip to the sea today was very rewarding. Apart from gaining a crack troop, he also gained a strength point reward. The chance to advance to 8th tier was right in front of him, and Mag obviously wasn't a patient person. He went to the balcony and locked the door carefully. Mag removed his bathrobe and put it aside before he walked to the center of the balcony and exhaled lightly. Then, he stretched both his arms, and said in his heart, "System, I am ready. We can begin now." Boom! An explosive sound suddenly appeared across the sky as 8 bolts of lightning twisted into one suspended column and landed on top of Mag's head. The suspended column lit up the balcony brightly. Mag, who was only wearing his underpants, bathed in the light. His muscles and bones seemed to have become transparent as they tore apart and reformed again crazily in the light. 3 minutes later, the light finally dispersed. Mag, who felt as if 1 century had gone by, flicked open his eyes instantly. He clenched his fists as he felt a special strength flowing about in his body, which could easily be controlled by his thoughts. Is it what 8th tier feels like? A smile appeared on Mag's lips. It was a familiar yet strange feeling. He didn't attempt to try out his sword. Instead, he grabbed his bathrobe and went downstairs naked. He took a bath before lying down on his bed again. He clicked open that yushao and soybean milk set meal, and entered into the test field for the god of cookery. Day off, Harold, who was about to go out, halted. He slapped his forehead and smiled awkwardly. "I drank too much yesterday. I forgot that today's my off day. Sorry, Doris. I woke you up so early." "It's fine. You have been working very hard recently. I should have reminded you last night," Doris said with care and concern. She stood up and hugged Harold gently. Her slender fingers massaged his temples lightly. Harold closed his eyes and enjoyed his wife's ministration. It soothed the headache caused by the hangover. He was a director of sales at a furniture company. Because he had not reached his sales quota for the second half of the year, he had been going to the office at 6 in the morning and drinking with his customers till late at night. Although he earned quite a lot, the intense work and high pressure made him exhausted. Fortunately, he finally closed the deal with his big client last night, and reached his second half of the year sales quota in advance with this deal. He could relax for a while now. The warm fingertips were pressing down on his forehead gently, and it was so comfortable that Harold wanted to go back to sleep again. "Let's go and eat breakfast since we are already awake," Doris suggested gently. "Breakfast?" Harold opened his eyes and yawned. He shook his head, and said, "I don't feel like eating now. I just want to sleep. Besides, you know, I never eat breakfast." Doris gazed into Harold's eyes, and continued to say gently, "You promised Kathy to bring her out for good food previously. You were very busy with work for the past few months, so I didn't mention it to you even when she asked me a couple of times." As Harold gazed at Doris, he suddenly realized that he had neglected his family, and left the running of the household to her because he was busy with work for the past few months. She even had to take care of their child, so she wasn't having things easier than him. He suddenly felt a little guilty. "I'm afraid there's nothing nice for breakfast. Why don't we eat out for both lunch and dinner?" Harold grasped Doris's hand and placed it on his face gently. He lovingly said, "I haven't eaten a meal with you for a long time. Let's go to Duca's restaurant." It was where they declared their love for each other. They would always go there every year on that day as a family. However, because he was busy with work, he didn't bring her there this year. "I have promised Kathy that I will bring her to Aiden Square to play today." Doris shook her head slightly. She worriedly said to Harold, "The doctor said we cannot ignore your gastric problems anymore. It will worsen if we continue to skip breakfast. I heard there is a rather nice restaurant called Mamie Restaurant in the square. Let's go and try it." Harold wasn't concerned about his gastric problems. He could tolerate the occasional pain, so there was no need to eat breakfast. He was feeling thirsty and dizzy, so he was rejecting the idea of breakfast. However, looking at Doris's expression, he couldn't bear to reject her, so he nodded smilingly. "All right, let's wash up and get ready to go." Soon, the family of 3 left their house. A girl about 7 or 8 was holding the 2 adults' hands. "Dr. Matthew, are you already back from your morning exercise so early?" The family met an old man doing his morning exercise as soon as they left the house, and Harold greeted him with a smile. This was their neighbor, a famous doctor in Chaos City. Dr. Matthew's steps faltered as he said to Harold with furrowed brows, "Harold, you don't look very good. Did you drink a lot of alcohol again last night?" Harold took a quick glance at Doris before he shook his head and smiled. "I did drink a little last night, but it should be because I have been overworked recently. It's okay. Please take a look at him, Dr. Matthew. He threw up when he came home yesterday." "There was blood in the vomitus," Doris said, full of concern. Kathy, who had a ponytail, also pleaded with Dr. Matthew, "Grandpa Matthew, please take a look at father." Dr. Matthew stared at Harold for a while before gravely saying, "Harold, although you are still young, your stomach's condition is worse than for an old man like me. Come to my clinic later. From today onward, you can't consume alcohol anymore, otherwise it is not going to hold." "Yes. I will come," Harold replied with a smile before boarding a horse-drawn carriage with Doris and Kathy. Even though Dr. Matthew is a good person, he still likes to scare people with his doctor's tactics. Harold consoled himself silently, but a shadow still hung over his head when he looked at his wife and daughter sitting across from him. "Let's go to Mamie Restaurant," Harold instructed the driver. A sentence was written on the wooden plaque on Mamie Restaurant's door. "Today's new item, yoshao and soybean milk set meal. Only for breakfast." "What is soybean milk? What is yoshao?" "It's only available for breakfast. Soybean milk and yoshao may be one single thing." No matter what it is, Boss Mag finally came out with his first authentic breakfast set meal. Although it was still early, a long line was already forming at the door. The customers were guessing curiously as they looked at the sign. Harold's horse-drawn carriage stopped outside of Mamie Restaurant. He saw the long line at the restaurant's entrance, and said in astonishment, "It's not even 7, why are there so many people lining up here? I heard this restaurant came in first in the latest delicious cuisine rankings, so it's very popular, but I didn't expect there would be so many people here." Doris was astonished too. Even though she was mentally prepared before she came, she didn't expect there would be so many customers. Kathy's eyes lit up as she looked up to Harold. "My classmates said the ice cream in this restaurant is super delicious. Father, can I have one ice cream please?" "If that's what Kathy wants, of course you can," Harold said smilingly. Although he didn't like to line up early in the morning, if Kathy liked it, he would feel much better. After all, he planned to spend the whole day with them. Harold and his family took their place in the line. They listened to the customers in the two different lines arguing about the savory and sweet tofu puddings. What took most of their attention was the new item released on that day. "This is an interesting restaurant." Harold's acute business sense made him realize this restaurant wasn't ordinary. However, he still didn't feel like eating any breakfast. A glass of water would be better than anything. The restaurant started its operation, and the customers filed in orderly. Harold was rather surprised that this restaurant which suddenly appeared at the corner of the square had such an elegant and intricate interior decor. After taking his seat, he didn't bother to read the menu as he simply said to the server taking his orders, "I would like to have a helping of your new item, the breakfast set meal." Chapter 1099 It is delish. Severe stomach ulcers. Hemorrhagic spots have already appeared, and are beginning to progress to stomach cancer. In the kitchen, Mag glanced at Harold in a surprise. "All right. What would Madam and the little cutie like to have?" Yabimiya asked Doris and Kathy smilingly. "I would like to have a yoshao and soybean milk set meal too," Doris answered with a graceful smile before nudging the menu toward Kathy. "Kathy, you can order for yourself whatever you'd like to have." "I want to have an ice cream," Kathy said without even thinking. Mia shook her head slightly. "The ice cream is cold and not suitable to be eaten as breakfast. It would hurt your stomach. If little cutie wants to have it, you can eat something else first before having it." Hurt your stomach? Harold felt as if something had touched his nerves, so he said to Kathy, "Kathy, let's eat something else first. Then I will have the same as father and mother," Kathy said after some thought before adding, "and one strawberry ice cream too." "Sure." Mia nodded before asking, "The soybean milk has two flavors, sweet and savory. Which one would you prefer?" "The sweet and the savory." A contemplative look appeared on Harold's face. Sweet tofu pudding rules, so the sweet soybean milk must be something super delicious. Savory tofu pudding is the real thing. "I choose the savory soybean milk." The customers around them were already arguing about the soybean milk's flavors. Although they spoke in hushed voices, they wore serious expressions. "I would like to have the sweet soybean milk, with less sugar please," Harold answered before asking Doris, "You prefer the savory one, right?" "Yes. I would like to have savory soybean milk." Doris nodded with a smile in her eyes. Even though they hadn't eaten a meal together for a while, Harold still remembered her preferences. "I want the sweet one, with lots of sugar," Kathy said, raising her little hand. "All right, please wait a moment." Yabimiya nodded smilingly. Then, she looked at Harrison, who was sitting at the same table with Harold and his family. "Miss Mia, is the soybean milk a limited purchase too?" Harrison asked before Mia could even open her mouth. He saw that the soybean milk looked very similar to the tofu pudding in the menu. "No, the soybean milk is not limited. You may have as many as you like." "Okay. Then I will have 2 yueshao and soybean milk set meals, 1 set sweet and 1 set savory, and 1 helping of sweet tofu pudding." Even though I belong to the sweet tofu pudding gang, I should still venture out of my comfort zone, Harrison said smilingly. "All right, your order will be ready soon," Yabimiya replied with a smile, and turned to leave. Harold observed the surroundings quietly. As a salesperson, he always had to entertain customers, so he knew a bit about all the restaurants in Aden Square. He didn't expect a unique one like this to exist. An elf and a demon sitting on the same table, goblins and dwarves sitting together peacefully too. This was a scene impossible to find somewhere else. They are lining up so early in the morning just to eat breakfast. These people are so free, Harold thought. Usually, he would already be having his meeting in the company at this time. "Your yueshao and soybean milk set meals." After a short while, Yabimiya sent the family of 3 set meals over and placed them gently on the table. "So this is soybean milk and yueshao?" Harold looked at the 2 golden brown plate-like things that had oil glistening on their surface. A crispy aroma already greeted his nose. Although there was some glistening oil, they didn't look too oily. Then, he looked at hot milky white soup in the white porcelain bowl at the side. This should be the so-called soybean milk. It looked similar to rice soup, and had a faint soybean fragrance. There was nothing exciting about it. The 300 copper coins set meal doesn't look like much, Harold thought. It didn't even look as appetizing as 30 copper coins a bowl had noodles next door. "Wow, it's round and fat. This yueshao looks so cute." Kathy already grabbed 1 piece of yueshao to take a closer look before opening her mouth and biting into it. Crack! A crispy sound rang out. Kathy's eyes lit up instantly. She chewed and the yueshao got even tastier as she continued. A blissful expression appeared on her face. "This yueshao is fluffy and crispy. It's so tasty," Kathy said in a surprise after swallowing it in 1 gulp before taking another big bite again. This was much nicer than the bread she ate every morning. "Take your time," Doris reminded her with a smile before picking up her spoon. The savory soybean milk in front of her seemed to have some sauce added in when compared to the sweet one. There were also some chopped green onions scattered and floating on top. When she stirred with her spoon gently, she could see some seaweed and tiny shrimps. A savory aroma washed over her together with the fragrance of the soybeans, which made her eyes lit up. She scooped up a spoonful of soybean milk, and put it into her mouth gracefully. The fragrance of the sauce, the savory aroma, and the freshness of the shrimps were combined perfectly by the soybean milk, and then blossomed together in her mouth. It triggered the taste buds that didn't have appetite in the morning in an instant. The soybeans' fragrance was so rich, and the savory touch was just perfect. It flowed down the throat smoothly, and the warm soybean milk became a warm current that flowed all the way down to the stomach. Its warmth made the entire person feel warm. Unbelievable scrumptiousness. Doris couldn't help praising. She raised her head and prompted Harold, "You should taste it too. Is it really that delicious?" Harold didn't quite believe it. He scooped up a spoonful of soybean milk. Steam was rising from it. He blew at it for a while before putting it into his mouth. The warm soybean milk felt like the rain after a long drought the moment it entered his mouth. It moisturized his dry lips and slightly sourish mouth. The sweet soybeans' fragrance began to spread and wash away the sourish tart taste. His tired taste buds felt like the grass moistened by the spring rain, and started to slowly awaken. The sweetness wasn't sickly sweet, and the soybeans' fragrance was even more refreshing. The warm soybean milk flowed down the throat smoothly. The throat that was hurting from last night's hangover and throwing up felt as if it was soothed by a gentle hand lightly, and the dry and painful sensation disappeared amazingly. The warmth entered the stomach, and banished all tired and painful sensations. The warm sensation floated around in his stomach, and the discomfort in his stomach became much better. What an amazing sensation! After drinking a mouthful of the soybean milk, Harold felt his entire body was smoothed out, and he felt rejuvenated instantly. He couldn't help sending another scoop of soybean milk into his mouth. He closed his eyes, and felt the beautiful moist feeling intricately before opening his eyes to pick up a yushao with his chopsticks and bite into it. It's delish! After swallowing that crispy and fluffy yushao, a mouthful of soybean milk was simply a perfect match to go with it. This piping hot breakfast had already made him forget the disdain he had for breakfast previously. After having the yushao and soybean milk, his stomach felt warm and fuzzy. It had been a little upset because he'd drunk too much last night, but after this soybean milk and yushao set, the discomfort had been completely dispelled. What a wondrous match, what a wondrous breakfast! It seems like there is a need to come for breakfast in the future, Harold thought. After that, he would be heading for his work, which started at 8 a.m. He really could consider coming over for breakfast before going to work. He had to admit that Dr. Matthew's words in the morning did have some impact on him. Kathy was still so young, and Doris had been a full-time housewife for years. If he, the pillar of the family, crumbled, they would have no one to lean on. He did not want to take medicine, but this yushao and soybean milk set meal would seem to be a good choice for breakfast every day. Harrison, who was swallowing his saliva for quite a while at the side, also received his 2 set meals. Wow, this looks very enticing. Which one should I start with? Harrison was in a dilemma. Just then, Mag came out of the kitchen with a smile and a knife in his hand, and reminded the customers, "Right, for the customers who have ordered the savory soybean milk, you can perhaps try dipping a small section of the yushao in the soybean milk. It might taste especially delicious." "Boss Mag, why didn't you say so earlier? I'm already done with my food." "Well, there's no other choice but to have another set. This savory soybean milk and yushao is such an addictive combination. The sweet soybean milk is surprisingly delicious. Soybean milk must be sweet, and tofu pudding must be savory. That's the correct combination." The restaurant suddenly bustled with excitement. The customers who had finished their food could only quickly order another set as they did not want to miss out on the special way of eating that Mag was talking about. Harrison, who was still in a dilemma, glanced at the savory soybean milk on his right. Without thinking, he picked up a piece of yushao and tore off a small part, dipping it in the savory soybean milk. He carefully used a spoon to submerge it completely into the soybean milk. After a while, he scooped a spoonful of soybean milk and drank it. The savory and aromatic soybean milk was very refreshing. The fragrance of the sauce and the shrimps blended together very nicely, and the dash of spring onions made the savory soybean milk even more refreshing and delectable. There is nothing better than having such a scrumptious bowl of savory soybean milk after waking up early in the morning. Harrison could not help but exclaim. After that, he picked up a piece of yushao and took a bite. It was crispy, and the strong fragrance that it had after deep frying increased the more he chewed it. Its texture was not as tough as ordinary deep-fried doughs. Instead, it was crispy and delicious. On top of that, the hollow interior gave the yushao an even more interesting texture. This yushao is simply a work of art in the world of deep-fried food. It's not even porous. How did Boss Mag make the interior of the yushao hollow? This is unbelievable. Harrison could not stop praising the yushao after taking a few bites. Let me try this yushao dipped in savory soybean milk now. Harrison put the yushao in his hand down, and went for the spoon excitedly to scoop the part of the yushao that had been submerged in the savory soybean milk. He put the yushao into his mouth together with half a spoonful of soybean milk. The crispy yushao became soft after being dipped in the soybean milk. It had absorbed the fragrance of the savory soybean milk, and it was a different kind of texture and taste when chewed together. It was savory, aromatic, and delectable with the smell of the yushao. It was indeed an indescribable deliciousness having both together. One set meal with 3 different ways to eat it. Boss Mag is indeed a genius. Harrison mumbled to himself. He was enjoying his food a lot. He finished the yushao and savory soybean milk set very quickly, and his gaze landed on the sweet soybean milk set. The savory soybean milk surprised him, and that made him less expectant towards the sweet soybean milk. He picked his spoon up, and scooped a spoonful of sweet soybean milk to drink. The sweetness of the soybean milk was quite refreshing, but since he had just eaten the savory soybean milk, the taste of this sweet soybean milk did not feel as rich and impactful. However, it was still considered a delicious breakfast combination together with the yushao. Although the sweet soybean milk is not bad, this time, I've decided to stand on the side of the savory soybean milk. Savory soybean milk and sweet tofu pudding. Harrison finished the 2 sets very quickly, and he rubbed his belly with satisfaction. This professional breakfast was indeed more refreshing compared to having braised chicken and rice or Yangzhou fried rice for breakfast. Harold had also finished his breakfast set. The food's quantity was just nice for him. He did not feel too bloated, but that warm feeling in his stomach still made him feel comfortable from head to toe. Judging from how many customers are lining up for the food, this owner indeed has some extraordinary culinary skills. Since my stomach feels a lot better after having breakfast, I will come over to have a breakfast set every day, Harold said with a smile to Doris after glancing at the kitchen. Doris was elated. She quickly nodded, and said, "Sure, that's great." She had been persuading Harold for many years to make him have breakfast normally. Surprisingly, after having this yushao and soybean milk set meal today, he actually decided to have breakfast every day. Bringing him to Mamie restaurant today was a very good decision indeed. I've already finished the yushao and soybean milk. Father, can I have ice cream now? Kathy asked Harold as she put her spoon down. Of course. Harold nodded. He raised his hand to call the service staff to bring Kathy the ice cream that she had been nagging about. Harold and Doris smiled as they watched the little child licking the ice cream happily. It had been a very long time since the entire family came out for a meal together like this. Yushao and soybean milk set meal garnered quite a good response from the public. However, a sweet or savory debate for the soybean milk seemed to be imminent. Mag decided to ignore that. The customers who had the yushao and soybean milk set today seemed to have gotten certain alleviation of pain for their stomach problems. It seems like this soybean milk and yushao have quite a good effect when it comes to soothing pain and healing digestive problems, Mag thought in the kitchen. He had taken careful note of the differences in the customer's body condition when they came and left the restaurant. Hence, he was able to deduce the effect of the new product. This was obviously another new medicine. I wonder what effect would Buddha jumps over the wall have? Mag started to ponder as he glanced at the huge pot cooking on the stove.